Ba-doop, boop, ba-doop, doop. Mm. Mm. Well, friends, I have my tasty beverage, which this morning is coffee. And the coffee's almost gone. So at some point, I may have to duck out for 30 seconds to put some water in my cup. But the question that no one is asking, but is of course on everyone's mind, is where have you been live streaming the last 2 days? And the fact that there's probably nobody watching right now pretty much shows you why that's not much of an important question. But the answer is, well, here's the deal. I had to do a little work setting up, pulling out the cameras, pulling out the lights, pulling out all the old filmmaking gear. Did I just say filmmaking gear? Filmmaking gear. Yeah, it's the voice actor who can't talk. Pulling out the gear in order to shoot some video for a promo. Hey, Tom doing art. Dude, you are first. You are absolutely on time. Well done, my friend. Well, speaking of Tom, I got to tell you, I bounced onto the Discord yesterday, and I actually got into a discussion with, name escapes me, but it's one of the guys that was kind of active in the chat here on the live stream a few days ago. And, hey, Varia, it's been a while. It's been a while. Good to see you. Good to see you. And I have to say I have mixed feelings about it. For one thing, you can tell that Discord is an incredibly cool, deep, capable, powerful chat/forum/ whatever you want to use it for platform. And so I think it's really great. But it is it's a little overwhelming, you know. There's just so many things you can click. It's like worse than, you know, Blender or something. So it's like really, I really like Discord, but I feel very out of my element just to get around, you know. So anyway, yeah. But Discord, for at least the people that show up on my live stream, I think for the most part, that's kind of the stomping ground. I mean, as far as like a forum platform or something, seems to be where people go. So, and then, by the way, if anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, at least for me, when I go to Discord, my starting point is always I mean, you can see what I have here. I mean, and there's Tom Idle actually, but I usually just kind of start out with Darren because it was 10 pence I was talking to yesterday, but you know, I just don't know what else to do or where to go or anything. And so I'm not asking for, you know, guidance at this moment. I'm just saying I did hang out a little bit on the Discord yesterday, and it was like, wow, man, you know, where do I even start? So anyway, and a fair question is, well, why would you care? And the reason I care is because, you know, I've talked on the channel here about launching a crowdfund, and of course it's you know, for the show, and of course I keep delaying launching the crowdfund, and so for that reason it's been my intent to maybe talk less about it. But see the white dot on each server, it means new messages. Okay, I'll definitely pay attention to that. So anyway, the last two, click the server, see the messages, dot goes away. Yeah, I've noticed that. Hey, Maria, good morning. I got your email. I think I responded to it, as I recall. So yeah, thanks for hanging out. Hopefully this will be somewhat interesting today. So let's kind of work across here, and as usual, I'm just kind of live streaming my work, whatever that looks like today. And so you may find this interesting. I suppose Maria, being into the whole acting thing, will probably find this interesting. What I did yesterday was I had Natalie come over, and we had to shoot this. We had to shoot a little promo piece for the Encourage TV YouTube channel. Okay, so this is a YouTube channel that's got, as I recall, about 600,000 subscribers. My one movie, Healed by Grace, has received if I remember correctly, it's received 1.2 million views vis-a-vis their channel. So it's been really good for as a distribution avenue for Bridgestone Multimedia, which is who owns the Encourage TV YouTube channel. And so basically my job at this point is to help them a little bit. Let's come back over to this screen. I'll kind of show you why. Just bear with me for half a second while I find something here on the L drive. Let's see where I put it. And this is one of those cases where if I can't find it really quick, I won't waste everyone's time. But it seems to me I would have put it either on the S drive, and I'm not finding it. But basically, I had downloaded these little promo videos that Bridgestone has from Corbin Burnson and John Schneider and Kevin Sorbo. And anyway, so you got these basic, really pretty crappy, frankly, webcam videos that these moderately well-known actors have shot just to kind of help those guys out and welcome you to the channel and be sure to subscribe, kind of thing. And so my job as not really a client of, actually, I mean, Bridgestone's been my client because I actually cut a bunch of trailers for movies that they distributed a couple years ago. I think I cut half a dozen movie trailers for them. And so they've been a customer of mine on the one hand, and on the other hand, they've also been a distributor of mine. So they go out and get my movies out everywhere they can, and then I get a check every quarter. That's kind of how that works. So anyway, they wanted something that featured a female, and so this is Natalie.
Grace and Healed by Grace.
So she's shooting this.
Darn it! I blanked. Ah.
My daughter.
I'm Natalie Weiss from Healed by Grace and Healed by Grace 2, which you can watch free here on Encourage TV.
And I'm David Matthew Weiss.
My dad.
So this was a little tricky because I wasn't actually there because I was behind the camera, and I had shot my half of it first. And so whenever I'm glancing at her, I've got to look to my right, and whenever she's glancing at me, she's got to look to her left. And I mean, and frankly, with my little dyslexia problem, I may have just said that wrong. I may have just said that in complete reverse to what it actually is. I don't know. But Natalie's funny in the sense that she's actually more dyslexic than I am, so she has to go like this to know which way is left. Okay, so no, wait, she has to hold up this hand. She has to remember it as this hand. How does that work? Because this is pointing to the right. I don't even know, but she does not. At 30 years old, she does not know which hand is right and which hand is left. She would not mind me saying so. It's pretty funny. So anyway, the question here today would be that may be of interest to some of you is, how do you pull a proper green screen? Now, someone had mentioned, I think it was Max, who's here on the chat a lot, had mentioned that, I think it came up in suggested videos. This video here had come up. It's called Green Screen Nightmare. So I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong screen. This video here, Green Screen Nightmare, goes into Blender, and this was actually originally a video that I sold. This was, as I say, 10 years ago, and it was put on YouTube 10 years ago after having languished for probably 5 years. So this is a really old video where I unpacked, using the Blender node-based compositing, how to do a proper green screen extraction. Okay, so there's a difference between what we normally think of as a chroma key versus an actual proper green screen extraction. So with a proper green screen, what you actually do is what you see here. You take, and again, this may not be, I hope it's interesting, and I'll try to make it concise, but basically here's what you do. You take the shot that has the green screen in it, okay, and you basically say, let's take the red channel and flip it in reverse. Invert the red channel, make it a negative image, and then distribute the red channel into all the color channels, so that all we see in the red channel is actually all we see in all of the red channel is the inverted image. The green channel is distributed among all of the channels, and the two are added together. The negative of the red and the positive of the green are actually combined, and that gives you this mask. And what that does for you is it gives you a much cleaner resolution on the edges, because when you're dealing with green screens, what kills you is the edges. Okay? And actually, she's a hard case, because right here you can see all these wisps of hair make it really difficult to get a clean mask extraction. So usually people just yeah, exactly. And that's why it's called a red-green difference key. It's as distinct from a difference key is not the same as a red-green difference key. The two are not the same. But the idea is to, hey, good morning from Colorado. Hey, Calvin, which part of Colorado are you in? I've got a bunch of relatives in Denver. So anyway, so that's the first step. So what you do is you reduce the video to the red. Actually, the green minus the red is really what happens. You're taking the green channel minus the red channel. Hence, you're adding the negative of the red channel to the green channel. Same difference, right? Well, then what you do is you invert it. So now this gives you your basic mask. The problem is that you never are going to have enough contrast. And that's where that green screen nightmare video is pretty helpful, because it really goes deep on how you actually combine multiple masks. One that's more coarse and gives you really tight edges that don't look good, and then one that's looser and softer but doesn't give you a clean matte. And when you add the two together, you wind up with a feature film quality green screen, right? So then once you've done that, you apply the mask generator and you clamp up the contrast. You get the contrast where it needs to be. Your min and max node actually lets you expand or contract the matte, so you probably can see this. And frankly, in this case, I probably went too far with it. I'm going to change this to 10 instead of, well, I say 10, actually 0.1. So 1/100th actually. And then a slight Gaussian blur, just the tiniest amount of blur. Okay, so once you've done all that, then the key thing is that the matte needs to be in multiply mode. That makes it disappear because it's multiplying the black and white image by nothing, and it's results in a whole bunch of nothing. Let me check one thing here. I think that I did that wrong. I was afraid this is what I would forget, because I actually haven't done a RG difference key in a long time. I think it was actually here that I needed to... Nope. I think I had it right the first time. So this is one of those little bits of nuance where... And frankly, every piece of software is a little different in terms of... in terms of how you work with color keys and whatnot. So for our purposes, what I've done is I've just created a very incorrigible state of affairs. And so what I'm actually going to do is reload it, because that's the problem. You got basically 18 different settings that you haven't looked at in 7 years, and you forget what the exact order of operations are. But anyway, what I did was I pulled the green screen and then just put blue behind it, because then I can render this, bring it into another video, and then use a plain old chroma key on the blue, and it'll look good. So anyway, she did that. But then here's kind of the fun part is, I figured while you're here, Natalie, why don't you just go ahead and voice Tianara? And so for those of you that are like me, trying to create your own show or cartoon or whatever, if you ever have to deal with a situation where you're doing what they call looping, okay, in Hollywood, when they do looping, what they do is they bring the actor into the studio and they play the video on a screen, okay? They play the video on the screen, and then the actor watches it and it plays back. It'll typically play back like 3 times in a row. Okay, you've probably seen this. If you look in YouTube, like a behind the scenes video, you might see this. Okay, so I learned making films that is the absolute, the way Hollywood does looping. I know this sounds arrogant to say, but I promise you guys it's true. The way Hollywood does looping could not be dumber. It's like the most expensive, stupid possible way to do looping. And the reason is because what I learned working with actors is that if 2 things. Number 1, when they watch that video, they will do a good job, but they're going to have to do it multiple times to get it, to get the performance, to sync with the video, blah, 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 blah. Okay? But there's a bigger problem. What I found was if you're the director or the writer, like, and you know exactly how the actor, you know what the acting is, you know the story, you know what's going on. What I learned was that if I say to you, if I said to Maria right now, hey, let's go to the store. Okay, here's what'll happen. If I tell you, Maria, if you trust me, okay, you trust me as your director. I say, Maria, I want you to really trust me here. And I've had this conversation with many, many actors. I say, I want you to trust me on this. I'm going to say to you, hey, let's go to the store. And what I want you to do is I want you immediately to say back to me exactly what you heard. I do not want you to think, and I do not want you to wait. And I found this to be true over and over 10 years of dealing with this. This is what I found. If the actor waits more than 1 second after hearing it, they will not say it back accurately. But if they turn their thinking brain off and simply ape it back to you instantly after they hear it, they'll nail it on the first try every time. Now, yes, there's exceptions. Every once in a while they blow it. Or I, as the director, may have said it wrong and say, well, why don't we try it this way? Okay. But what happens is if I say, hey, let's go to the store. Hey, let's go to the store. If you immediately, with no hesitation, not even 1 second, because 1 second will ruin it. It's crazy. You would think this is insane. There's no way this is true. That if I wait 1 second, I'll say it differently or I'll say it wrong. Now, the problem you're going to have if you're a hardcore, if you take a lot of pride in your acting, you're going to have a really hard time with this. Believe me, trust me, folks, I get it. Because what you're going to say is, well, that doesn't give me the chance to put characterization and nuance and motivation, and you're never going to get the quality of performance that you'd get if I was able to own my part. And that's all true. And when you're dealing with really skilled actors, basically that's true. But on the other hand, if you're dealing with that quality of an actor, you don't tend to have to loop them anyway. Unless there was a technical problem where you just recorded crappy audio, right? Okay, so normally in the modest budget filmmaking world, the buck really does stop with me as the writer and director in terms of how I want the thing performed. And usually the actors do trust me. And what happens is if they trust me, we tend to get that good result. And the thing is, it happens quickly. So when we did Heal by Grace, Tommy Beardmore, he's from Chicago, so he's traveling a long time. He comes in, we're doing the looping, we're doing it the old way, and we're getting these takes where it's just a little too long, or it's not quite right, or whatever. And this was, but when I said, look, Tommy, what I want you to do is I want you to just trust me, and let's just do it this way, the whole movie had all of its dialogue replaced in 1 hour. Now, in his case, here's what we didn't do. It wasn't me as the director saying it to him and he says it back. What it was he would watch the video of the clip, but there was no waiting and there was no watching it 3 times and then trying to sync with the video. So he's seeing the mouth move and he's trying to talk with it. He wasn't doing that. What he would do is he would hear it and immediately we're in record mode and he would record it. And like I said, we looped the whole movie in 1 hour. That's insane. They can't do that in Hollywood. They can't get a movie looped in an hour. It's kind of that way, Tom. It's kind of that way. So well, what's the point of the story? Well, this is what we did. She had not read the script. She never saw the script. So I said, okay, well, let's just do it the way we used to do the looping on the movies. I'll just tell you what I want TNR to say, and you spit it back to me. And then what makes it good or adds quality to it is the fact that she gets it in terms of the idea that she understands who TNR is. She understands that she's kind of got a good heart. She's got a little bit of that Disney princess thing going on. Hey Max, I mentioned your mention of the of Green Screen Nightmare, and so if you go back and watch the beginning, I was just kind of going through and looking at how a green screen extraction actually gets done, because this is Natalie. We shot this yesterday, and she's literally the same person that was in that video you watched from 10 years ago, Green Screen Nightmare. At least I think it was Natalie in the one that you mentioned. There were actually 2 green screen videos about Blender, but anyway, so as far as the looping, this is what we did. I just had the script on a laptop. Okay, and then, by the way, the reason I'm sharing this with you guys is because now we're getting away from animation a little bit, but this is a really important part of creating a cartoon. And if you have limited funds or limited resources, and you can find, well, what's the most effective and cost-effective way to get a good result, with my limited resources, I found out making films how to do that, how to get good quality audio, how to get good quality lighting, things like that make a really big difference in the quality, that can become extremely time consuming. It's like I talked the other day about $30 dimmable LED lights. This footage here, by the way, was completely lit with LED lights. Let me see what else I have open here on the, so right here you can see my version of this. Okay, so this is what I shot of myself.
And I'm David Matthew Weiss, writer and director of Healed by Grace 1 and 2. Be sure to... Go ahead.
So then she says her line. So it's just a little kind of a funny moment there that we baked into the promo.
And check out blendedplanet.com to see what we've been up to.
And then what happens is she and I both morph into cartoon characters, and then it's actually Tianara and Mel that say the next 2 lines of dialogue, and then the 2 of us kind of go like this silly little thing, and then the Encourage TV logo comes out into the middle of the screen. Okay, so that's basically what the promo is. So I shot my part of it, and then her job, of course, was to come in and shoot her part of it. So we've got to extract the green screen. But then the other thing I thought here was that, look, as long as you're here, let's just shoot it as video, and then we've got this footage for behind the scenes material for Salt and Light, because I think part of the part of the whole unfolding of the show is going to be creating kind of a little bit of a docu thing about behind the scenes and the making of and all that. And so this kind of footage helps with that. It's one thing we can use. But getting back to the dialogue, so what you're going to hear here, I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'll play some bits of it, and you'll see that all I did was I knew how I wanted it read. I know how Tina talks and who she is, and Natalie pretty much had a good idea. And so then I said, okay, I'll just read it, and you just ape it back to me, and let's see what happens.
So do it again.
American.
Oh, okay.
It's American accent.
Got it. Okay. Tianara.
Okay, so now actually this part she's struggling a bit because we figured just for fun, since she's here, we'll go ahead and record her doing Carliana, which is Tianara's mother, because I figured, okay, maybe if she gets the attitude right, no guarantees, maybe we can pitch it down like 1 or 2 cents. Well, not 1 or 2 cents, maybe like 1 semitone. We could pitch the voice down a little bit, and since they're related, it wouldn't be ridiculous that they would have the same voice actor do the voices, but just modify both the attitude and the characterization a little bit. So she did not get it, the first couple tries here at all. It was way too forced, it just didn't feel right. Once she started getting the attitude of Carliana right without trying to deal with the pitch, so not trying to pitch her voice down, but just trying to get the attitude, the blah blah blah, kind of the angry, what is the word? I don't know. She's a very rich merchant who's kind of power hungry, and so I think Tom's question is kind of getting into the question of rotoscoping to a degree in terms of at least using video footage as a reference for the acting. You know, the truth is I haven't done a lot of that on this show, but you could, and it would be very economical to do so. Frankly, probably for most of the people that come here to this channel, it would be really smart to if you know how you want your animation to go, you know, with the caveat that if you're dealing with something that has tons of action or violence or whatever, it might be hard to act it out, right? But if you know what you're doing, turn on your webcam and do it. Act it out and use that as a guide for your animation. As far as I'm concerned, that's not cheating. That's just being smart. And but as far as what you see here in Natalie, you can see in her facial expression there. It might be easier to see, I guess, if we put it on the big screen. You can see that she's trying her best to capture the attitude of Carliana, right? So that's
Tianara?
Right, and now more like, Tianara?
Tianara?
okay. So she got the attitude right, but not the
What
but
are
not
you
the voice.
doing?
Yeah, and she's trying to do some
No.
crazy accent.
What are you doing?
That's better.
He has nothing.
He has nothing.
See, now that's Tianara.
That's Tianara, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
He has nothing.
Tianara, we do not speak to such people.
Tianara, we do not speak to such people.
It's a little too strong. A little overdone, for sure.
Surely it can't hurt to.
But surely it can't hurt to
Remember who you are, Tianara.
remember who you are, Tianara.
Yeah. See, like I said, she's trying to deal with the voice instead of the attitude too much.
Okay, say it one more time. I gotta remember the line.
Remember who you are, Tianara.
Hey, Dominic.
Remember who you are, Tianara. I don't have a deep.
Yeah, no kidding.
But we have so much.
But we have so much.
So yeah, I think she's gonna work great.
I've heard enough.
That's better.
What?
Balder?
Balder?
So I mean, literally, I'm reading the lines. She's never heard them. She doesn't even know what the lines are gonna be.
Confine Tianara to the wagons.
A little too dramatic.
Okay. Confine Tianara to the wagons.
Better.
Okay, we'll keep
She may not work for Carliana, but we'll see.
scanning through to find the next bit with her.
Okay, we got a little bit of dead time here on the video, so I'm gonna jump forward. So, and I won't go too long with this, but I think it's kind of fun.
Good to see you again, cousin. You bring good news?
Now that's Carliana. That's the attitude. That I like that one.
Excellent. Tell me all about it.
Excellent. Tell me all about it.
Yeah, that's way better. Because
Okay.
I can pitch it down a little bit.
That's
digitally.
true. Okay. Okay.
Okay, Tianara. Oh, sure, you can sing. You're free as a bird.
Oh, sure, you can sing. You're as free as a
Well, obviously you are a bird.
Well, obviously you are a bird.
But the point is
Tom,
you're
the
free.
answer is yes.
But the point is you're free.
Free to go where you want.
Free to go where you want.
I'll give you the whole line now. Free to go where you want, wear what you want, do what you want.
Free to go where you want.
Ooh, you threw away the word too.
Wait, it's go. Wait, what are the two,
Yeah.
three?
Yeah, see now, okay, I want to mention what happened right there. If you're not really careful as a director, you might have missed that. But what happened was she said, free to go where you want. She threw away the word to. Okay, and that's a really easy thing to do. Now, so how do you deal with that? As an actor, the way you deal with it is you introduce a certain amount of discipline into your diction. So you might break it up and say, free to go where you want, like that. So there's actually a little bit of air between those words. And then you might say, well, I want the word to be enunciated better. Free to go where you want, okay, like that. Now, and it's also possible, to speak to Tom's question, digitally to close those gaps again. You know, you can digitally make those breaks shorter. So the nuance of how much you stretch a word out, like free to go where you want, do what you want, you know, that kind of thing. But what she did right there that I had to have her redo it was she literally threw away the word to. She said Frida. And sometimes you can get away with that, but
I'll give you the whole line now. Free to go where you want.
And I did it too when I read it to her, actually, as you can see.
Free to go where you want.
Ooh, you threw away the word to.
Wait, it's go. Wait, what are the two, three? Go, where, do. Okay. Free to go where you want, wear what you want, do what you want.
You still threw away the words freedom.
Okay. Oh,
Exactly.
Free to.
So what you want to do is push the word free. Free to go
Oh,
where you want. See,
okay.
they all count.
Yeah. Free to go where you want, wear what you want, do what you want.
Okay, so Max, I know where you're coming from, and you're don't take this in a negative way. This isn't a criticism. You are more critical than most people. Okay, when you're looking at what I'm doing here, you're one of the more vocal critics. And again, that's not a criticism of you. I appreciate your opinions, and I think that a lot of times you're spot on. And I appreciate the fact that you catch things that maybe other people catch but don't express, or maybe they don't catch it. But I would disagree with you if you close your eyes and listen to this one.
Yeah. Free to go where you want, wear what you want, do what you want.
Okay, now close your eyes and you listen to that and picture Tianara and what you would do with her animation-wise. You could do a lot with it, and there's a tremendous amount of emotion in that.
Free to go where you want, wear what you want, do what you want.
One thing that might be obvious to some people, but they might not guess this, is that what Natalie actually does for a business is she's a party princess. So she will actually dress up as a character like, you know, Belle or Rapunzel or one of the Disney type characters, and go to a birthday party for a 3-year-old girl. And she's a really good singer too, so she can sing these like Disney princess type songs like perfectly, right? And she has that kind of voice, you know. So in a sense, one could argue that her bandwidth with her voice, like compared to me, if you look at the video I posted a couple days ago, the 3-minute video about voice acting or the voices in the cartoons, you can see that I have a fairly wide bandwidth, okay, in pitch and tone and everything, and I've really made it my goal to, you know, continually get better at that. Okay, whereas Natalie has she's probably more gifted in terms of talent and just having a really neat sounding voice on the merits of just the voice that God gave her kind of thing. She's probably more talented than I am. But she doesn't have as much bandwidth, so she can do certain things like amazingly well, and then she'll struggle a little more with some things that are more on the edges. So, and that's just the trade-off. That's the trade-off you deal with. When you compare, as an example, if you compare what Billy West can do. Now, Billy West has a voice kind of like mine, so he's the one who does a lot of the voices on Futurama, right? Billy West has amazing bandwidth, but if you listen to the guy talk, he's kind of got a normal, you know, not an amazing voice. Whereas and the best example I can think of right off the bat would be, I was thinking of David Kaye, who did the voice of Megatron in Beast Wars. Well, David Kaye's got a really great voice, really a pretty rich, deep voice, but he actually doesn't have a huge bandwidth. So it just depends on, I mean, he's really good and he does a lot of different stuff, but basically he doesn't fool you into thinking he's 7 different people and you're going, oh my God, that was all the same guy? You don't say that with David Kaye. With Billy West, you go, geez, I can't even believe this guy was doing all those different characters, and they all sound so different, right? Similar discipline to singing. When you say certain consonants differently when you speak them, that's right. You know, if I was voicing this, I'd be saying it's a similar discipline to singing, where you say certain consonants differently than when you speak them. So there's all kind of breaks in there, and there's doing one thing I learned doing voiceover is that you bite the consonants, but you even bite the vowels even more. So if you have a word that starts with a vowel, you're highly likely to throw it away because you're going to tie it to the previous word. So the best example I can see in Maria's comment would be differently than when you speak them. Now, you arguably is not a vowel, but you're highly likely to say than when you speak them. You're kind of likely to throw the word you away. So then what you do is you bite it. You would say differently than when you speak them. Differently than when you speak them. You put that pause and that bite in between those two words. And then there's other things you learn about, like using your diaphragm to breathe from below so that you actually never run out of breath and you're not going, you know, every time you need to. So in Max's comment, yeah, you're right, Maria. Of course it's going to be common to do a contraction of you are. But what if you didn't want to? You'd say, yeah, you are right, Maria. You might want to break and bite that. You might say, yeah, you are right, Maria. Yeah, you are right. You see how I bit the word are? Because I didn't want to throw it away, right? That's really important, and it's part of the nuance that you start to learn when you're dealing with voiceover, is you learn how to bite and how to look ahead. You learn to read ahead and think about what's coming, and you begin to plan, and as you get better at it, you can do it more and more in real time. Now, what we're doing here with Natalie kind of mitigates that problem, because we're only dealing with one phrase at a time, and I'm literally saying it to her so that she can immediately, yeah, the microphone, it's about a foot. It's about a foot. So it is true that we get, in the audio itself, we get a little bit of ambience, but not much. It's pretty clean.
Wait, is that Tianara?
Yeah. So this is where Tianara,
married?
Where she finds out she's going to be married to the prince.
Wonderful.
Isn't it wonderful?
See, now here her rendition of Carliana is working.
Well, no!
Oh, come to marry each other.
Okay, by the way, if I had it to do over again, I would have her redo this, because look at what she did.
Well, no!
Okay, so now this is something that's common to millennials. Let me switch to this screen. This is very common to millennials, and I have no idea why. But there's something about millennials that, listen to how she tagged the "w" onto the end of this.
Well, no!
No! Something about her generation, they grew up doing that, and they didn't learn it from us, the parents. So I don't know where that comes from, but I've heard it many times with millennials.
No.
Well, no!
Now we can fix that, because as you can see, there's plenty of room here to cut that out. We can cut that little hiccup out. So,
Oh, come. To marry into royalty? It's a tremendous opportunity for you and our family.
yeah, again, I'm not sure it's going to work, her as Carliana. It's probably,
Father never would have...
it's right in the middle.
Enough of this.
In other words, if I didn't want to kill myself finding a different voice actor, I could make it work. Again, with maybe some digital post-processing. You know, the other thing that people have to remember about looping is that when you're working in a program like Reaper or Vegas, actually, let me just show this really quick. It won't hurt for me to do this. Right here, first of all, we can split this and just move this downstream. Okay, so...
No!
Okay, so now you got a little bit of a problem that it gets cut off a little bit. Okay, so then, you know, in practice, what you're going to wind up doing is probably stretching it out a little bit like this. And so it...
No!
Okay, so now it seems like that fades out really, really fast. But you got to remember, in the show, you've also got the ambience. And there's Max, right? Max is weighing in as the dialogue coach. Again, Max is correct, but I'm still going to pretty much disagree with him, because I'm fairly confident that once you have the dialogue working with the visuals, working with the, the flow of the editing and everything working together, what you'll find out is that what Max is saying needs to be there, it's going to turn out it's there. That doesn't mean that it couldn't be improved. There's always room for improvement, and there is a point of diminishing returns. Hey, Ashna.
Well, no!
Okay, so the fact that it drops out, this is really distracting, because you can feel the ambience in the room until this fades out, and then, of course, it's literally dead silent, so it's really distracting. So this sounds like it's going to be less usable than it actually is.
Well, no!
You're going to have a little bit of a bed of music under it, the score of the scene that kind of, enhances the drama, yada, yada, yada. So anyway, the other thing I was going to show is this. If you split this, and we go in here, let me see we can use, it's not time stretch. I don't think it's time stretch. Yeah, that time stretch plugin is useless. I'm trying to find the, it might be one of those cases where what I'm looking for is just not at my fingertips, and so I'm going to be wasting everyone's time talking about it. But suffice to say this, we've got really, really good quality time stretching algorithms nowadays that allow you, and by the way, if you're using something that's free like Audacity, what's called the Paul stretch, it's a stretching algorithm created by a guy whose name is Paul. But Paul stretch is built into Audacity, really high quality time stretching, where you can stretch something out. It's pretty easy to stretch something short. Okay, so in other words, actually, I think here's what I wanted to do. So I'll stretch this out a little bit like that. Okay, so now watch.
No!
Okay, so now that sounds pretty crazy because of the way the audio has to be chopped up. So now if we look at the properties here, yes, what we want is elastic, and I think what we want is soloist monophonic mode. Maybe soloist speech, actually. So if we go soloist elastic, that's what I was looking for.
No!
So you can see that we're actually able to stretch this out a fair amount, about 30% there.
No!
And so when you have somebody who does your dialogue, and then it turns out, you know, the timing's not quite right, you'd be really amazed how you can, yes, Tom, the answer is yes, you can absolutely adjust the timing without affecting the pitch. So now here's the shortened version.
No!
Right? So you can go to extremes.
No!
And if we set this back to just 1, then that sets it back to the original actual speed. Now, working in Reaper, it also uses elastic for time stretching under the hood, but we have a little bit more control over the way that we stretch things and move them around. So as the guy that's sitting, at the edit, and all I have is time, right, into this, basically. Whereas when you've got actors involved, you got money involved. So I'm paying them for their time, and there's a point where if you can solve, especially something like this, you might have a technical problem that's going to take you an hour to figure out the solution. This happens all the time. And so it would be, so yeah, Maria, you can stretch out a note on an audio track. Yes, if you want a free way to do it, my recommendation would be Audacity, and I'm pretty sure Paul Stretch. Also, you can download Reaper, R-E-A-P-E-R. I've been using Reaper for 10 years. In fact, I've been using the same version of Reaper for 10 years. So they've improved some things, and it's just, for me, there hasn't been any big reason to upgrade. But you can download Reaper for free and use it for free for an unlimited period of time, and every once in a while you'll get poked to register, which is $60. But Reaper is an absolutely fully professional, industrial strength, awesome program for all things audio. It's not as simple as Audacity. Audacity is going to be a little lower cost of entry in terms of your learning curve, right? It's like the difference between OpenToonz and Blender. Okay, if someone wants to shorten their learning curve, I'm going to say you probably want to look at OpenToonz, because it's going to take you a little longer to wrap your head around Blender and the interface and blah, 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 right? So anyway, let us continue, and we're not going to continue too much longer, and then we're going to get back to animation here. So, but I think probably this is pretty valuable information for a lot of you guys.
To marry into royalty?
Oh, come. To marry into royalty?
Yeah, see, so, oh, come, I didn't like. To marry into royalty, I thought was okay.
Oh, come. To marry into royalty?
And I'll switch back to here so you guys can see better.
It's a tremendous opportunity for you and our family.
She almost sounds a little too happy there. So again, I do want to emphasize that probably Natalie will not be doing the voice of Carliana. But, she was here. I figured let's try it.
Father never would have...
Tianara, enough of this.
Tianara, enough of this.
You will not...
Well, plus she's kind of hurrying a little bit.
You will not dishonor his memory.
Yeah, and that's not quite the attitude I'm looking for that. As I say, we were moving fast.
She will thank me later.
And now that sounds right. That sounds like Carliana.
She will thank me later.
That's a little closer. And you guys may not be able to hear the difference. I don't know.
Right.
It's a little subtle. I may be hearing things that you guys don't hear.
She says, "This is outrageous."
This is outrageous.
No spare.
And this was interesting because through this section of the story, you got Tianara who has to kind of pretend to be emboldened when actually she's afraid. So there's this weird mix of motivations that have to come out in her voice, right? Oh yeah, that's what she does, Max. That's her kind of day gig.
Well, it helps for context.
Okay. So
I don't want them.
So I think I'll wrap it up here pretty quick.
That's what everyone says.
my freedom for their opportunity.
My freedom for their opportunity.
Now let's do that one again. That's what everyone says.
That's what everyone says.
My freedom for their opportunity.
My freedom for their opportunity.
That's better.
That's a little better.
The second take was better, at least on the my freedom for their opportunity.
No, thank you.
Okay, so we'll stop there. That's kind of sort of what's going on over here. So I've got to go through this whole thing, and what I'll do is I'll chop this down into takes and then lay it into the show, and I'm sure we'll bump into some situations where the timing isn't quite right, you know, per the animation, because in this case the animation was done first, right? And Max, when you say much better, I have literally no idea what you're referring to, but oh, you're referring to the second take. Yeah. Hey Yash Pawar. So
It's not as if I really had a choice.
But it's not as if I really had a choice.
Do that one again.
so I think
But it's not as if I really had a choice.
I could definitely stand a little more attitude there on that line. So this is what I'm going to wind up doing. I'm going to wind up going through this and actually cutting out all the space in
Really?
between.
Please explain.
I mean, any girl would be thrilled to. To what?
To what?
Marry His Royal Highness in his extravagant robes?
Marry His Royal Highness in his extravagant robes?
What's wrong with my robes?
I was doing the Vespar lines, right? And she didn't know what was coming.
Well, come on.
You have to admit you do look a bit ridiculous.
You have to admit you do look a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a little too staccato.
Okay.
Too staccato.
You have to admit you do look a bit ridiculous.
You will show respect. I have spoken. She says, spoken? Ha! Maybe you talk too much.
Spoken? Maybe you talk a bit.
And Mel's outside listening in.
And actually, I think it switched between takes there on the camera. Yeah, what happened there was the camera switched takes, so we're going to have to wind up re-recording that one, unfortunately. That's too bad.
You did not see me. Got it?
Enunciate that.
So anyway, there you go. So this is what happens, and we'll wind up chopping this down, and then just dragging the individual lines of dialogue into the show. So now, just checking the comments here for half a second. Was she looking at the animation to match the timing? Yash, absolutely not. What we were doing, and I won't repeat all of this because everybody's already heard it today, but no, she actually didn't even know the script. So this was done economical movie looping style, which is I say the line the way I know as the writer, as the director, I know how I want it said, more or less. Okay, so I act it, and then immediately she spits back to me what she just heard me do. And working that way, we've found that we've been able to do dialogue replacement on entire movies very, very quickly, like in an hour. And it's a pretty darn good way to get the quality of performance that you want pretty economically. So that's got to be one of your better drawings. Well, I'm glad you say that, because let me jump over in the other screen. Yeah, see, so this is what we're replacing. What we've been doing on the animation side is going through episode 1 and fixing things. So I'm going to actually put a marker here because, boom, because this section, this is what I'm fixing. So this was all done in Krita. And it's not horrible, but it's not great. And what we're trying to do is get to great. Well, how do we get to great? Well, I'm going to completely redo the shot. Okay. So the background is actually just muted down, right? The background's okay. It'll probably be defocused a little bit. And I can always paint into it and make some improvements if I want. But the main thing is I really want to do a better job with Mel. So in this case, one thing that does jump out at me at the moment is the scaling of the bowls actually needs to be a little bit bigger. But of course we can change that anytime we want. So Angela Lansbury had an interesting interview where she talks about learning to project her voice without using a microphone and mildly criticizing modern actors for not learning how to do this. You know what? It cuts both ways. If you look at oh geez, of course I'm gonna have a brain fart now. Okay, so who played the butler against Christian Bale in the Batman movies? Or who played the butler? So he's Cockney, and for some reason his name is escaping me. Who played butler in Batman? This is so stupid. I hate when I have a brain fart, like premature Alzheimer's. Yeah, Michael Caine. Okay, so Michael Caine, you can find a really good symposium here on YouTube. You look it up, Michael Caine, where he talks about film acting, and he really makes a distinction between stage acting and film acting. So the other extreme, so as far as Angela Lansbury goes, she is correct that you should learn that. I mean, absolutely. So then the opposite side of that coin you'll get from Michael Caine, where he's really talking about the intimacy of film acting and how not overact. It's like really easy to overact because of the way that the camera zooms. Yes, thank you. Because of the way the camera is so intimate with a person. And when a person can be seen to be acting, which the camera will see, it basically becomes unusable, you know, in terms of your take, because you lose the authenticity of the performance. You know, most of the time the truth is somewhere in between, really. So, with voice acting, you're gonna tend more towards the theatrical side of the story, you know, I think without a doubt. So, okay, so now what I wanted to do here was, again, I'm getting back to basics. And so what I want to do is just kind of block in the motion. Kind of when I say get back to basics, what I mean is refocus on the acting, actually. Refocus on the acting. And what do we want? And now I probably shouldn't have inked this. I probably should have just done it fully as a pencil test first. So if Amar was here, he'd spank me for that probably. But I'm just going to kind of get this blocked in. And basically, you've got a I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's basically a an arc, if you will, that his movement's going to take that we've got to animate. So what I'm doing is I'm just basically getting the center line of his head. Okay, and I'm going to argue that I don't like this one. The basic structural oval or egg shape, kind of an upside down egg of his head is fine. But this, I think, needs to tend slightly more this way, convex versus concave or flat, for the reason that I want the initial tween to be a little closer to the first drawing, and then more of a jump. That's kind of a function of working at 8 frames per second. I've just found usually tweens are more effective that way. So we got this line here. We got his eye line, and so now we're going to just find the path. Okay, that's all I'm trying to do. So you could break this down as sort of a multi-step process of you know, fixing these shots and trying to take what I've learned along the way about animation and apply it. So step 1 is kind of just figuring out what I'm dealing with in terms of timing and what I want to portray in the acting, you know, if you will. And then going in and making sure that the characters are on character. I mean, the great sin I've committed throughout this show is that I've allowed the characters to be a little bit all over the map in terms of their basically how they look, you know. So usually when I'm doing a fix, it's at least partly because the character is what we call off character. So you might say, well, why did that happen, Dave? I can tell you why it happened. Some of the better shots in the show were actually done early in the production. And then, in a nutshell, if when I started working on the show, I think I'm correct in saying this, is that I'm going back and reading the comments here. It is, number one, it's technically unclear whether there's something in the bowls. And I believe the original, what actually happened, let's go back in time. What happened was the bowls, if I remember correctly, the bowls were animated, I think, in OpenToonz. And then I rendered out an image sequence, and then I used the image sequence repeatedly in multiple shots in Krita. So these bowls have been all over the place in this section of the show. Okay? So, to your point, they do seem to be dancing around a bit by themselves. On the other hand, you know, this is a cartoon, and we are, you know, there's a certain amount of, you know, impressionistic latitude, you might say, that we have. So, but yeah, to be absolutely fair and accurate, of course, in a perfect world, the bowls would actually be done in 3D. Why? Well, because you've got the over-under problem. The problem is that the bottom of the bowl has to be inside or behind this little wall here, and yet in front of this wall here. So you wind up with some structural challenges, which you could do with multiple layers, obviously, in 2D software. But, I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways that you could improve this that go beyond what was originally done, which, by the way, was quite simple. It was to draw one bowl, just duplicate it a bunch of times, and then animate it, right? So, but yeah, point taken. I'm going to ignore that for today because right now I'm more interested in working with the character. So, the question that no one asked, but that I was answering anyway, because this is my channel and I get to talk about what I want to talk about, was, well, why are your characters kind of off character? And the answer is because of quite a period of time of testing workflow with Blender, with Krita, basically testing different working methodologies that I thought at the time would maybe speed things up, which is kind of bad. I mean, speed things up as opposed to just increase the quality. You know, I'd like to think my emphasis is more on quality than speed than, you know, it used to be. But so what would happen is when I was trying those methodologies, sometimes I would hurry through certain parts of the process because I'm in a hurry to get to the end result to basically see if it's going to work, right? I've talked about that here on the live stream different times. That's pretty dangerous. What I've learned is that, you know what, if you're disciplined and you work hard and you're willing to take the time, you're going to be able to make it work. Okay? So if you're willing to suffer that time cost of figuring it out, have confidence. It will be fine. And so now forget about testing things. Just focus on doing a good job with whatever the work is that has to be done today. So that's kind of the paradigm that I'm following now. It sounds ridiculous. I mean, I know some people would, especially people who have more like good training than I did, because I'm self-taught. Like everything I do, I'm self-taught. That's not necessarily a good thing. Because I've tended, of course, to be a bit of a late bloomer for that reason. So it looks to me like his eyes here are a little too far apart. And I don't like that. Actually, he's a little bug-eyed there. I'm going to come back to that one shortly. So now in the original, I'm going to jump back here and see what happened. I expect, yeah, his tongue pops back in his mouth. So he actually, right, okay. So what actually happens here is you're going to have a boop right there. Okay, so I just hit the wrong key, so I have to start over. Boop. I think right here, I'm going to make a duplicate. Just zip in right now and take this. Use the Smart Raster paintbrush and just get rid of this right now. Okay, so, and then this is a bit problematic. The that has to be deleted, and then what we have to do here is right mouse click and fill in empty cells. Okay, so now this is actually a great example of where maybe a little plastic tool would be useful, because that seems a little abrupt, and there's no context for it in terms of the motion. So, but we're okay. We're okay. But what I was going to say is that if you applied the plastic tool to the character and then just give him a little bit of body motion right here when the tongue pops in, these are things I'm always thinking about, is what am I going to do downstream that's going to add that little bit of secondary animation that kind of pushes it home. So, okay, so let's go back here. Each bowl 2 levels. Well, exactly. I'm going way up. I'm going up about 20 messages here. Bowls nested more closely. Each bowl 2 levels. Exactly. That's exactly right. Exactly right. So everything Tom's saying is correct. Yes. Okay, think of them like a line or arc. Right. Well, and that's what I explained. If you did it in 3D, the software would kind of do it for you. If you do it in 2D, you've obviously got to put, there's a front and there's a back of the bowl. And honestly, really, what you would probably have is just this region right here in the front. So I would have to go back to the original source material, which I think was done in OpenToonz, in order to improve that a little bit. So Max has really nailed it. He says your skill was lower when you did it the first time. It would have, it would have been useless to go into the details the first time. Well, yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know if I agree, though, because I think that it's my opinion that chasing the rabbit trails of software workflow in a way to try to speed this thing up so that I can do it fast enough, okay? That quest consumed, or was certainly in the back of my mind for most of a year, okay? And I don't think it helped. Okay, so if I go back to, for example, to, let's see, episode 2, what's interesting, and to be fair, a lot of this was done in Krita, but if we go back to this footage, which is the end of episode 2, okay, what I found is that other than the characters being a little off character, the problem isn't the quality of the work as much as just the characters being off character. Okay, so that's just something you got to deal with and fix, right? Because the characters did evolve a little bit. But as far as the overall look of the show, I was actually getting as good or better results way back at the beginning than I got through the middle period. And the middle period, I don't know, I definitely got a little off track, especially with trying to make Blender part of the workflow, and the grease pencil. That workflow is fine and it has its place, but not on this show. It's not the right solution for this show. You know, and having said that, could you make it work? And by the way, why is there a key there? This key probably belongs up here. Yeah, you could make it work. So I'm not making any proclamations here. Hello? Let's pick the right brush there, Jack. But I'm just kind of sharing what I've learned along the way that I feel like has harmed the quality. Now, if you look at life kind of the way I do creatively as a series of sessions and drafts, where you say, well, you know what? If you okay, so what I'm trying to say here and having a hard time saying it is, if you look at it as, okay, I'm going to spend an hour on this shot, and I don't even care. I'm going to work on this for an hour, and I'm going to move fast. I think that's a legitimate way to work. If you do it bearing in mind that the whole idea is to wind up with something that you can fix. Because this is the way I look at it. Psychologically, the blank page is kind of scary for most people. However, criticizing something, finding what's wrong with it, especially if you get away with it or get away from it and come back the next day, is kind of easy. So if you look at it as the whole idea is to create something that you know darn well you're going to revise, then it makes sense to say, well, then let's just move quickly, so that what comes out is whatever we're viscerally capable of today with our current level of skill, and then just understand that the whole idea is to go back and fix things. I think that's actually kind of a good way to work, and I think it's what you see in, if you're going to look back at the stories of Disney or Pixar and the way they use storyboards to let like a story evolve and that sort of thing. I mean, that's basically what they're doing. It's understood from the start that this is going to evolve, right? So, but for me, all I can say is that's no excuse. That's no excuse. My problem is, and this isn't bad news. I mean, the show's coming along fine, and everything I've done this week, say on episode 1, has really, it's improving, and everyone seems to agree that it's improving. So, again, no bad news here, but I'm just kind of spitballing about what I've learned along the way, and if I can sum it up this way, is it's better to focus on quality, whatever that means to you, and when you approach a project, approach it with the attitude that come hell or high water, I'm going to figure out a way to make it work, even if I have to redo it 50 times. Now, in practice, you won't have to redo it 50 times, but you might have to redo it a couple times, and that's okay. And the basic rule would be this: what good does it do you to do it more quickly if you're going to have to go back and redo it? Right? So, indeed, we do have shots in this show that just simply have to be redone. Okay, so now I'm going back and looking at the edit. I need to go back to episode 1. Episode 1. And Pixar does tons of animatics. Yep, animatics are helpful. Well, it's kind of like, I suppose probably most people would think that in a perfect world what happens is you go from script to storyboard to animatic to animation. And that's probably a pretty good way to work. For me, I'd be looking for ways to, as much as possible, make those steps flow naturally into each other, so that each step gains from the one before directly. In other words, it'd be nice if the assets that you use in the animatic could then be, you add drawings and or secondary animation, plastic tool, blah, 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 to actually take the animatic and turn it into the final animation. You could do that if if you give the proper attention to the drawings. If the drawings are kind of in the final form in the animatic, then that can definitely become a stepping stone to the final animation. Okay, so I'm going to put this on the preview because I want to look at because the timing of what he did here is pretty good. Okay, so he kind of, he stops, looks over, and then turns his head. Okay, so let's just kind of go with that. Okay, so here, let's keep it loosey-goosey. He stops. Let me watch that again. He stops. Oh, I see. He stops, blinks, and then looks without turning his head. Okay. So if we were going to do that here, which I think, I like the way it flows. Stop, blink. Okay, yeah. So we got a little mistake, which would be boom. Okay, so let's do it this way. Let's go ahead and add the eye blink here. Which is pretty easy. Let's just go take the Smart Raster paintbrush tool and just get rid of his eyes. Zuko, why are you being so chirpy today? What's your problem, dude? Zuko's over there. I think because Kyle is up and about. Zuko's had an interesting habit lately of chirp. Every time Kyle walks by him, he chirps at him. I have no idea why. And Kyle's been getting annoyed by it. Like, why does he chirp every time I walk by? So I'm just doing this the hard way. So if you guys hear a bizarre chirping sound in the background, that's just Zuko. Zuko! Find a hobby, dude. He has a lot of toys in his cage. I mean, he's got really nice toys. It's not like the guy doesn't have stuff to do. Okay? Just saying. Just saying. Okay, so now, just for fun, I'm thinking, boom. I'm actually going to take this a step further. I am going to run the risk of stretching this animation out too long in the interest of exploring some of the characterization ideas that are occurring to me. Okay, so if I was going to do it this way, what I would do is I would go 5. I'd put 5 back in, but then this one would be a duplicate. So I'm going to hit the D key, but then this has to be taken out. And then we'll fill this in here. Again, we're going to go fill in empty cells. And then this one, what we're going to do is have him look over. Okay, so Shift spacebar. All right, so let's just keep this. Well, I guess we could do it this way. We'll try it and see how it goes. Well, I guess I want to crop this tightly to the eyeball or the pupil so that I can make like that, which basically makes it so that the size of his pupils doesn't change. Okay, V key, little cleanup, little cleanup, little cleanup. Okay. Let's just watch and see. Let's turn this off so we're not distracted by it. Zuko, will you stop chirping at Kyle, you knuckle bunny? Okay, not horrible, not horrible. Except, I don't like the expression. So here's what I want to do. This is where I've got kind of an opportunity to fix this up a little bit and capture a little more effectively Mel's normal persona, because he looks a little bit wide-eyed in that first shot, which is okay. We're doing okay. All right, so now obviously we could redraw this. This is one of those cases where I don't know that we need to. If it fuzzes out slightly from stretching it with the selection tool, that's okay. So I think that's what I'm after, and then we'll go take this. Well, again, I want to, when I select this, I want to select it pretty tightly so that the flesh color above the eyelid or the eyebrow doesn't cross over the stuff up here. Hope that's making sense. Okay, so now Like the Cobbler and the Thief, very focused on animation skills, less on story. Right. Well, Richard Williams, I mean, the Cobbler and the Thief is a absolute, for those who don't know, just Google it, or look for it here on YouTube. It's basically hand-drawn animation, despite what you might think about Disney or whatever in the history of 2D animation. The Cobbler and the Thief is some of the most sophisticated, skillful, hand-drawn 2D animation in the history of the world. I mean, it's off the chart, stupidly amazing, some of the stuff he did. And this was done by Richard Williams, who's been around the animation industry for years and years, and he wrote the definitive tome or book on animation called the Animator Survival Kit, which I have a copy of. And and Richard's still alive. He's pretty old now. But his biggest claim to fame that people would be familiar with would not be the Cobbler and the Thief, which was basically his pet project that he worked on for decades. Years and years he worked on it. I don't even know if it was ever released. He's not alive. Oh, if he died, then he died not that long ago. But anyway, but his claim to fame would be Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Richard directed all the animation on that movie. And again, at the time, oopsie, wrong color there, fella. I mean, everybody could learn a lot from studying Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Absolutely amazing work. For a lot of reasons. Even actually as a director, when I look at some of the things Zemeckis did to create the practical gags that the animation worked around, he really, I mean, it's just a great, and I've never been a huge Zemeckis fan, although of course I did like Forrest Gump, but yeah, and of course Zemeckis always works with Alan, again, the name escapes me, the composer. He always works with the same, it's just like, JW always works with Spielberg, Tim Burton always works with Danny Elfman. Well, Zemeckis always works with Alan blank, seems like it starts with an S, and for some reason his name's escaping me. Okay, so I feel pretty good about this, especially again if you added a little bit of secondary animation, a little start. Yeah, I'm liking it. I'm actually going, okay, Dave, you're finally starting to actually do a little bit better work here, fella. Oh, he was still working on it? Oh, see him, wait. I'm looking at Maria's comment to see if that means she's... Okay, died in 2019. Well, the universe welcomed him into eternity, I'm quite sure, in a very positive way. Because he was a... Man, he was a pure soul, Richard Williams. In that he just wanted to do good work. He just... His whole life, he was just trying to master the medium and just do a good job. I think that's the vibe I always got from the guy, and he really made it his mission to unpack everything about animation, the technique. Now, my criticism of his book is that he literally spends half the book on walk cycles, and I get the point, but I would have preferred... Okay, so in this case, I think this is where I can actually get away with cheating a bit. So I am going to cheat in this case. I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it into here. This is a great example of where I really think I'm spinning my wheels by redrawing it and re-inking it for no good reason. And I would like to think I'm getting better at judging that. Now this, let me check here. Okay, the head moved up a little bit, so that's bugging me. So let's just kind of get that. And again, this could have been done with the plastic tool. But let me check the flow here. Yeah, I mean the jump to this pose, there's a case to be made for flipping the head, so I suspect it will not work, but just for the heck of it, I'm gonna see. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna grab the horizontal and just put a little negative sign in front of it. So that flips the head, and if we change the angle on the eyes, so again, this is one of those cases where I want to be careful. I'm not just trying to save time. I would not be doing this if I didn't think there was at least a pretty good chance that it's actually going to look better. Okay, so now let's follow this through, and you know, it's going to cost me 5 minutes to see if it's going to work. And if it's not going to work, the key thing here for me is don't chimp out. Okay, that's not going to work yet. And the reason it's not going to work is because what I need to do is actually move this way up out of the way so that I can then hit the S key and paste this in. And actually, the interesting thing about this, okay, and I'm going to go ahead and use the really interesting thing about this actually is the idea that his eyes are still focused over there on Tianara, which actually really works for this shot. Okay, I'm gonna keep running with this. Okay, let's just keep going with this. Okay, so boom, bop, bam, right there. Okay, so now this would be I'm gonna do the eye blink thing. So let's do 2 duplicates. You know, this is totally all about the acting. For me right now, this is what I'm thinking about. I'm just really thinking about the way he's emoting and what he's doing. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the Smart Raster Paintbrush, and just to save time, I'm going to go ahead and set it at 8 pixels. So what I want to do is, the way his eyes are being pulled over to look at the pretty girl, I want to he's kind of not really wanting to pay attention to Luca or the monkey, but they sort of got his attention too. So let me grab this. Okay, and let's add the I'm going to check the comments here in half a sec. Oh, he does explore a lot besides walk cycles. He does, of course. And I've seen the video version of it. But like Dominic said, it is, yeah. I mean, 150 pages. Now you could argue that 150 pages isn't even enough. There's some wonderful things that he says about walk cycles, and I think for most of us here, the takeaway would have to do with observation. He gives an example of a guy who was, I don't know if he asserted if the guy was gay, but he said that the guy had a really effeminate walk, and he was really freaked out. Like he couldn't understand what he was seeing, because the guy had this effeminate walk, but he was on the other side of a wall, so he couldn't see the guy's legs or feet. He could just see this guy walking. And the weird thing was, the guy was walking along and his head wasn't bouncing at all. He was just and once he was able to see the guy's feet, he could see that it was a very effeminate walk, and for whatever reason, because of the way the guy walked, his head didn't bounce. It's like his head was locked in space, Okay, so now what I want to do, and I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try this. Spider asked the question, is animating your full-time job? Nah, typically I've been working on Salt and Light for about 2 hours a day average. Sometimes it's as much as 6, but sometimes I take days off. So on average, it's about 2 hours a day. It's one of the kind of one of the rationales, frankly, behind why I plan to launch a crowdfund, for the show, is that I'd really like to make it a full-time job, and I'd like to be able to justify giving it my full-time attention. Okay, so now this is a little bit problematic. Probably what I need to do here, so it doesn't really look like a jolt. I'm going to clean all this up, so don't worry, people. What I want to do is take this. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so then what I'll do is just take the Smart Raster Paintbrush tool. So yeah, what I'd like to do is work on this full-time, and then at a full-time pace, my expectation would be, based on kind of a lot of experience here working on it, is that I could generate a 24-minute episode from script to screen, start to finish, in about 4 months is really about what it would take. Whereas right now, I'm still doing okay. I've got, this is a 24-minute episode, and I have 2 of them done. Basically, episode 2 is, this is episode 2. So basically, episode 2 is animated except for this 3-minute section here. And this is what I was working on a couple weeks ago. And then I diverted back to doing fixes on episode 1. So that would be awesome. My brother and I are doing the same. Cool. Makes me think of a book on running. Great advantages a cheetah has by being able to run with his head staying on target. Yeah, a lot of animals have some pretty amazing capabilities. Working on an animated show, but most of what we're doing is vector animation. We're only on episode 4. It's taking us 2 weeks per episode just for animation. Well, yeah, if you're using a rigged approach, you can definitely. It's actually, when I was talking earlier, I was talking about some of the missteps along the way on this project, and certainly one of the missteps had to do with thinking that, on the one hand, the direction I wanted to go, and on the other hand, the direction that would give me the economies in production that I needed, would be to use a more rigged approach. Okay? And that kind of informs a little bit of the visual style and things like that. And, my sense right now is that basically that didn't work for me. It was okay, but it just wasn't the look I wanted for the show. I really wanted more of that sort of Western. I'm hitting, by the way, I'm doing erasing now. I'm hitting selective so that when I go like this, it's only going to erase my pencil lines. Okay, and the main reason I'm able to get away with it, doing it this way today, is because when I'm doing my ink with this palette entry, I have it in pencil mode, which means that it's not anti-aliased, but my level settings have anti-aliasing added. So what that does is when I do my ink, and they look kind of stair-steppy, but when it renders, it smooths it out somewhat. So it's not a perfect solution, but if you look at it at actual size, even without the anti-aliasing, the truth is you can't really see the stair-stepping. Okay, so now we have a bit of a problem here. We have a bit of a problem, friends. 5 is a blink, and 2 is supposed to be a blink. Where the heck did my blink go? My blink disappeared. Okay, that's all right. What we'll do is we'll just do it over. We'll just do it over. Is Enio-san around today, by the way? Enio-san, if you're there, chime in the chat. The reason I ask is it seems to me that somebody inquired to me on Discord about basically, and it was in June, hit me up for some kind of like voice thing, like can you do this little quick and dirty voice thing, which I assume is probably something he wanted to use with some little animated thing he's working on. It seems to me that it was Inu-san, but maybe it wasn't. And I saw the message after I haven't been on. I appreciate that, Spider GS. The best thing, you know, and basically I've delayed launching the crowdfund like 10 times. Okay, so call me a goofball. I keep saying I'm going to launch it. I was looking at August 15th to launch it and run it through October 15th, and then it would be an ongoing thing anyway, almost more like a Patreon than a. But so there's kind of an order of events where I really want to make sure that what I'm doing and what I'm offering to do is having a hard time saying what I'm trying to say here. Part of it's the story, okay? So for me, I have a strange tug of war in terms of my story. I think that if you're going to crowdfund, it's not enough to be just doing something cool. There's got to be some real benefit to the audience and to the contributors, and there also has to be, I think, you know, a compelling story that people can get on board with, you know. And I think the compelling story has to be, I mean, this is of course my opinion. I think it's probably backed up by other people's experience, but the story has to be a kind of a combination of the story about the project and the story about the person. So friends, I have a problem in that regard. Here's the problem that I have. If I talk about what I can do, right, and what I can guarantee, you know, I have created multiple feature films. I do pretty much know everything there is to know about screenwriting, editing. You know, my weak point is animation. I'm pretty good at scoring. I'm pretty darn good at scoring. I've worked very hard to get good at it. I created 4 pretty crappy movies on the way to making one that was okay. You know, yada yada yada. So the problem for me, this is so stupid, but my problem is that when I tell my story, it's just like you're just this, you know, you can do this and you can do that, and you're Mr. I'm so amazing, and I'm not. I don't want to be that guy. I'm really trying to help people. You know, when I do the streaming here and I talk about things like how to get good looping and, you know, talk about voice acting, it's because I know this stuff and I'm not trying to be a know-it-all. It's just that I've done it. I've spent 10 years doing it. I have spent 10 years making all the mistakes. Where I haven't made all the mistakes long enough to really get good at what I'm doing is actually animation. Okay? I hope that makes sense. So then the question becomes, well, what's your story? Why do you want my help? Why should we support you? Is a really important question that I've been doing some serious soul searching. And I think the answer is this. And this will make it into my pitch video, is this. Okay, 2D rig like Archer or 3D. Oh, you guys are just, I mean, obviously Archer is actually done, last I checked, was done in After Effects, right? But yeah, it's definitely rigged animation, rigging and deformation, and, you know, so the story is that 2 things. Number 1, I've always been a cartoonist. It's the most visceral thing I do is draw. It's the thing I did ever since I was 5 years old. I was always the best artist in the school, yada, yada, yada. And all the time I was making films and doing all the rest, yeah, it was sort of informed by that to a degree, but basically everything about art, you know, as opposed to music, as opposed to whatever, you know, you name it, really, drawing was on the back burner for all these years. Well, okay, so now we have a little problem. I can see. Drawing was on the back burner. What I was finding happening was, if I posted, like if I did a painting or something, like a watercolor painting or an acrylic painting of like some wildlife or something, I would post it on Facebook, and really it was like the only thing that I would ever post anything about that would ever get any kind of real reaction, you know, where it was a really, I mean, people really responded to that. And this is over many years, but way back, you know, I was working with Blender back in the year 2000 and was pretty involved in the Blender community early on. I even met all the developers and all that down at SIGGRAPH in 2000 in New Orleans. And that was when Blender went public, and well, they didn't go public, but they had venture capital, and that went totally sideways and almost destroyed Blender. Actually, okay. It's a very interesting story how Ton was able to salvage Blender from being actually buried as a piece of software, just buried forever. But anyway, so I always wanted to do an animation, and basically here's the deal: when I went through the darkest time in my life, which was about 8 years ago. Went through a divorce that I didn't want. And, you know, you could waste a lot of time talking about the ins and outs of that, but the bottom line is that, you know, in hindsight now, I get it, and I see where it was important and necessary step for her, and I respect it, and I think that it's probably been better for me by a wide margin that happened. But one of the really bright points when I went through that period of time, it's a really rough period, was just binge watching cartoons with my kid. You know, we would watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, we would watch Futurama, we would watch, you know, Beast Wars, whatever, you know, stuff from the 90s sometimes. And it was interesting because we wouldn't just watch it. You know, we would talk about it. We'd talk about, you know, the characters, what we liked about it, what we liked about the writing. Oh, that episode was kind of a filler episode, right? You know, things like that where we would, you know, it really, it was a lot of fun. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to capture, you know, I hope that the writing, I think it does. I think the writing on this show, because like yesterday when we were doing the looping, so those who don't know what I'm talking about, when I started the live stream today, I was showing this work that I did with my daughter where I was reading her the lines of the show, and then she was aping back to me her lines, right? So she was actually voicing the voice of Tianara, right? So this was, you know, so.
Well, come on.
You have to admit.
So I would tell her the lines, and then she would read them back to
You
me.
have to admit, you do look a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a little.
But the interesting thing about this is that Natalie did not know the script at all. She hadn't read it. It was literally me reading her the lines and her aping back to me the lines for Tianara. Well, my point is that when I would go ahead and in between read the lines for either Mel or Vespar, she would bust out laughing, right? She really was enjoying the story because she didn't know it. She was just kind of there to read the lines. And so I'm like, okay, so this is working because, you know, people sort of laugh when they're supposed to laugh and things like that, right? And if you can take an experience like that that's pretty enjoyable, and then get people on board with characters that they begin to care about and root for, that are wrapped up in an epic story that's way bigger than themselves, and has some real heroic elements to it. That's one thing I will say here without revealing why. There's some stuff about Salt and Light that is, it's huge. when you think about stories that inspire you from the standpoint of courage and people who rise to the moment, you know, when the opportunity's there and you know, their backs to the wall, do they rise to that moment or do they buckle, you know? This show will be that. It will be that. And I say that with confidence because I am confident in my ability as a writer. No question about that. As an animator, I'm still learning. Still improving. Still trying to get my act together. It's going okay. But as a writer, I have no doubt that people will definitely enjoy it. So I just kind of wanted to wrap my own head around the story, my story, of why I'm doing this, you know, and why I would ask people to support me. Because I'm not comfortable asking people to support me, frankly. You know, if you're Mr. One Man Studio and you can do it all, what the hell you need our help for? You know, kind of thing. It's a fair question. It's a really, really fair question. And the answer is, well, as I said, right now I'm working on this thing at a pace of a couple hours a day. And I would like to say, you know, this is going to be my full-time job for at least the next 3 years. That's my goal. And the only way that's going to happen is if we get the support. I am very confident that one way or another, I'm looking here to see, I'm on episode 1. Had to switch back to here. I mean, one way or another, I'm going to get these episodes done, but I'm really thinking about the bigger picture. Okay, so he looks over at Luca and then goes, oh, hey, cool monkey. Okay, so he says, hey, cool monkey. All right, so let's go back here. Okay, so what would happen here? All right, so I may be letting this animation kind of drift and bounce around more than we really have time for. Okay, yeah, this is wrong. This shot right here is wrong. Okay, what we need to do is let's get rid of the eyebrows and we need to lighten up his expression here. So it's a little more inquisitive. You know, he's like, oh, hey, that's cool, and then he's gonna break into a smile. So I kind of got the attitude wrong there, people. So I don't know. I'm just trying to do what I do. And so somebody asks me, "Are you a full-time animator?" Well, I think I would like to be, because I enjoy, you know, I like creating the show. I think I'm okay at it. And whoops, that was the wrong tool. I need the brush. And I also think that you know, probably if the show gets some traction, then that's going to create other opportunities. What that means is that you know, there are people here on my subscribers here on my YouTube channel who are really, really talented and more talented than me. And so I don't want to throw the carrot out there as if to say that the point is to build a team. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure that's where this is headed. You know, I mean, the truth of the matter is that if somebody else was doing all the animation and I was essentially the head writer and showrunner, I wouldn't mind. You know, as long as the quality of the work is good, I don't necessarily have to be the guy doing it, you know. And as I say, there are several people that are subscribers right here on my YouTube channel who are way better at this than I am. And by the way, guys who might not have any interest in a project like this, because it isn't full animation. It's not, you know, I'm not trying to recreate Disney. It's kind of an anime-informed, westernized, you know, as I say, it's reminds me the most of probably Avatar: The Last Airbender in terms of stylistically. You know, it's not everybody's cup of tea. It just isn't. But okay, so but it would be cool, so okay, so what am I trying to say? I'm not one of these guys that it's just all about collaboration. Everything's all about collaboration. Some people are really into collaboration. My honest experience has been that if you're going to collaborate, you want to collaborate with people who definitely are better than you, who really, really know their stuff. I've had bad experiences trying to collaborate with writers, co-writing. It hasn't worked out because the people that I've collaborated with, the reason I did it was kind of to give them an opportunity to get a screen credit or something as a writer. And what would happen is I'd wind up having to completely rewrite them because their skill just wasn't quite where it needed to be. So, I would be looking for people who are palpably better than me at what I'm trying to do here in key areas, where they would be, they would represent an improvement compared to what I can do myself. As I say, I think I'm doing okay. And it is fun to wear all the hats. Oh, I'm sorry, dude. Thank you. I'm sorry. My bad. I think that was only a few minutes of that. I've done it. 3D anime just had bad production. I agree completely with Max on that one. Max, it isn't very often I agree with you so much that it's absolutely. Okay, so I want to go back here and I'm going to look at Max's comments for a second. Max usually has some pretty proactive insights about what to do, and ultimately I have to make the decision, but I think I want to really respect his ideas. So he says divide into parts. One part, I did movies. Okay, so it means we can do this and we will finish the project. A lot of projects do not get finished. They're a fraud. That's the biggest fear. Okay, yeah. Now I'm not gonna put this in my pitch video, but Max, I'm gonna say this here. I don't mind saying this here on my live stream. If you look at Hullabaloo Steampunk, okay, this is a guy who I think is a nice guy. He former Disney animator. He crowdfunds the show. He winds up getting $600,000, and now it's 6 years later. Where the hell's the show? Right? As far as I'm concerned, Don Bluth, same thing. Tries to raise money on Kickstarter. It doesn't quite work. He cuts it off early. He goes over to Indiegogo, does an Indiegogo campaign, raises over $500,000. Where's the Dragon Lair movie? Where is it? That makes me mad. Okay? It makes me really offended that these guys are able to come up with that kind of revenue and then not deliver. Nothing wrong with making the money, and I'm sure they're spending it. I don't know about Bluth, but as far as the other guy, I forget his name. I don't know if he's been sidetracked with other projects, so it's just languishing and it's taking him a long time. So for me, I agree with Max. I mean, part of the pitch for me, it's as I say, it's a tug of war. Okay, I say, well, looky here, look, I've got 2 episodes almost done, and really what I'm trying to crowdfund out of the gate, which by the way, I'll just tell you guys, the number is $72,000. It's basically $36,000 per episode. Okay. That's the goal. You say, well, yeah, but if you've already animated it, why do you need the funding? Well, the idea is that I've got a big head start. The goal is to create a 12-episode series, right? So I've got this head start, and the purpose of the head start is so that if I'm going to crowdfund this thing, I can say, look, I guarantee you, I promise, this thing is going to get done, and it's going to get released, and it'll probably happen within episode 1 within 6 months. Almost like for sure. We're already recording the voices. The animation's all done. All that really remains to be done is blocking in the audio and music side of things, and then doing what I'm doing here today, which is off to the library there, buddy. Oh, okay. All right. Have fun, buddy. There goes Kyle. So what I'm doing is I'm basically being real critical here. I'm looking at episode 1. I'm going. There are things that I just don't think are good enough yet, right? So yeah, it was animated, but it's not up to scratch. And so now I'm going through literally shot by shot and going, look, does this need to be improved? Yep, this has to be improved. This has to be fixed. Yada yada yada. That's what I'm doing. And so I don't know. I mean, for me, it's like this sort of tug of war between, the story you're trying to tell. But even from the beginning, when I first started thinking about it and or talking about it, it was my contention that the one thing that I will not, tolerate is the very idea that you're gonna crowdfund something and then not deliver the goods. Now another thing I sort of struggled with was like rewards, like what would be meaningful. And I think there's some stuff that could be cool, a little bit of a maybe like doing a making of documentary would be kind of cool, where you can go do a little deeper dive on kind of the story behind it and whatnot. But vector level, I need to put in some mouth action here. So what I'm going to do is hit the B key. And then I think, I'm going to go ahead and put the onion skin on there so I can see what I'm doing. And then, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. If you're using a vector level, I'm going to redo that one. If you're using a vector level the way I'm using it, where you have auto close, auto group, and auto fill on, so that you can basically draw a shape and it's filled automatically for you, make sure you don't just click the screen and draw a dot, because Tahoma will actually crash. Okay, so now this probably should be this. Oops, didn't grab. You sort of have to click it and then grab it. So he says, hey. Okay, so now we're going to go to anime style voice over here, which is going to be at 8 frames per second. We're going to do 2 frames here. And then I guess we'll do a slightly smaller mouth here. Okay. So in other words, I'm using a sort of an algorithm of voiceover that makes it so that he could say anything in any language and the lip sync would still work. Cool monkey. Yeah, so he says cool monkey, and then we're just going to go back to the smile here. So, all right, cool. I think we're actually getting close to where, other than possibly some secondary animation with the plastic tool, I think we're getting pretty close to done. Zuko, Kyle's gone. What the heck are you still chirping for, buddy? I tell ya. Zuko is chirping up a storm today. Okay, so let's turn the onion skins off. Hello? I said turn you off. Okay, that's a little weird. Why are we seeing the onion skins? I have a little bit of a technical mystery here. Oh, there's one way up here. Duh. Okay. All right, so now what I got to do is get this color a little bit more so it sits in the mix. Okay, checking the... looks like nobody's saying too much, so okay. All forms of art are a continual exciting process of learning, growing, changing. I can create a lot more of this stuff. You like it, support it, simple, we all gain. Fair enough, Max. I think that's pretty close. I think that's pretty close. Your earlier comment, the dividing into parts. Yeah, so what I've been looking at and recrafting is the signal flow. Now, let me just say this. Because I showed this, and I think you saw it a month ago or whatever, a couple weeks ago, when I showed the current iteration of my pitch video. And what was missing from it, I think, is what came out in the video I posted a couple days ago on voice acting and voice work. Okay, because what I did in that, and those who haven't seen it, just look at my channel here. I posted a couple days ago. Where do the cartoon voices come from? Okay, so I did a 3-minute video, very short, but it's really a machine gun rat-a-tat through doing all kinds of well-known character voices, from SpongeBob to just you name it, all the characters from Futurama, a couple of the characters that are in this show, yada 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 yada. But the thing about that video that I thought was really fun, because I just shot it on my phone, what was really cool was that video probably did a better job of capturing the real me, than most things I do. I had a lot of fun doing that video, because I'm like, yeah, this is what I do. This is what I do. But I'm always challenging myself, I'm always challenging myself to do different things and be good at this and good at that. And that's how I've always rolled my whole life, I'm always trying to expand my capabilities and my skills, and it's a lot of fun. So, I look at it as weird. I would love to meet another person and just bat things around with them, just share ideas with somebody who also writes, can write a screenplay, can, do animation, do character voices, write the music, the whole thing. The only guy I can think of who's like that I can think of is Robert Rodriguez. Robert Rodriguez can do it all. Really talented guy. Very technically knowledgeable. He can handle the special effects side of things. Really smart guy. Basically seems like a pretty nice guy. Hey, Dead Pianist. Haven't seen you in a bit. Welcome to the live stream. Okay, so where are we at? I'm about 2 hours into it here today. And maybe our timing's good here. It might be a good time to wrap up, because actually, hey, cool monkey. Okay, you guys, actually I think this worked. So let's back up. So here's what we're going to do. Let's jump over. I won't switch screens so I don't accidentally forget. But if we go back to episode 1 here. Okay, this is a pretty sad, now that I look at this is pretty sad. So this is what I had to start with, okay? This is what I did, it probably was done at least a year ago, right? Okay? So not only is Mel a little off character, but he's actually not even drawn that well. It's pretty rough. So as, kind of mapping out the acting or whatever, it's probably okay. But as far as the execution, what about you doing animated shorts? Okay, so Tom, what a great question. Dude, you've asked a super good question. Here's the deal. Look, if you look at a crowdfund situation that worked pretty well, look at Little Witch Academia. What the Trigger Studio guys did, and I love Yo-Yo Shinari. I love his work, and he's basically the creator of Little Witch Academia. Now, you may or may not like that show, but as far as Yo goes, I really admire the guy. I admire his work ethic is insane. The guy works like a dog. Anyway, what they did was they released like a short episode, I think, on YouTube. They just released it publicly. And then over there in Japan, they started hearing about this thing called Kickstarter, which they didn't really know about. At least that's the story they tell. And then once it was out there and got a little traction, then they got all kinds of support. And I think that that's a really valid, you are becoming weeb. Dead Pianist, do me a favor, write a more detailed comment and explain what the heck you just said. Because I don't know what that means. You are becoming weeb. I may not know the terminology because I'm just too old, okay? But I have no idea what that means. So to Tom's point, I think that, and in fact, I was just talking about this yesterday, the reason why I had Natalie yesterday voice the entire part of Tianara was because the part of the show that I'm working on right now, I want to show you guys this. This is the deal. It occurred to me yesterday Okay, so I had Natalie go ahead and voice the entire Tianara part. Because I'm like, you know what? As long as I'm doing this promo segment for Encourage TV's YouTube channel, why don't I have Natalie voice the show? And what if we literally release this scene? Because this is the scene where Mel first sees Tianara. What if we punch up and fix up just this little sequence? So this is a minute and a half of the show. But it's the moment when we first meet Mel, and when Mel first sees Tianara, which are the two main characters, right? What if we just release this? So let's just say, let's make it 2 minutes. So we've got 2 minutes to show. Why don't we release this? Fix up everything that I feel needs to be fixed up. But this introduces you to the characters and a little bit of the dynamics of what's going on. And let's just release it. Do the audio, do the sound, do the whole thing as a finished production, and use that to maybe get a little traction, to draw attention to the crowdfunding aspect. Give people a little taste. I think that's a good model, and frankly, hey Amar, and I think, Tom, that it's the entire approach that would be taken to the fan Futurama thing, you know, that I wrote and voiced, and then that Darren T's been sort of poking at here and there. The fan Futurama thing, I think, partly to mitigate any potential legal problems, would be to do it only on YouTube as a fan thing, and just release it, you know, one little sequence at a time, and that's all it ever is. I don't think you could crowdfund it, because now you're asking for trouble legally, trying to crowdfund something that's essentially someone else's intellectual property. Now that doesn't, it's not possible. I mean, it is possible that you could talk to those guys and they might be all supportive of it too, right? And maybe give you a little document that shows they're sort of giving you clearance to go ahead and, you know, capitalize on it to a small degree. And those are all things that just take time, you know, to explore. So, all right, let's turn the shadows back on. And now what we need to do is figure out, yeah, I think what I'll do is hit the B key, and this would be a good time to save my work. If Maria was around right now, she'd be having a kid, because I haven't saved my work. Did you see the finished versions of your characters' art, Dave? No, I'll have to chase that down again. Let me see. I think since Amar's here and we've got 11 concurrent viewers, let's just do it right now. So I am actually going to go into my Gmail on the other screen, and got a couple messages here from clients. So bear with me, my friends. Bear with me. Okay, so now I'm going down into my group of YouTubers, and I'm following the link that Amar sent me. Okay, and I'm looking at it, and Salt and Light Final, here it is. Okay, so guys, here we go. Looky here. Look at what Amar did. So kudos to Amar, and thank you, my friend. Amar did essentially fan art of the characters from Salt and Light. So this is art by Amar B. Art with Amar B. Did these versions of the Salt and Light characters. Cool, huh? So, anyway, yeah, thanks for doing that, Amar. Anybody else that wants to, you know, do something similar and ultimately maybe have your art be in the, you know, this kind of gets back to the crowdfunding thing. When we do a docu, like a making of, I think part of the story and part of the fun of all this is actually this little community. This is a very, very small community, right? I only got 2,500 subscribers, and right now we've got probably the most concurrent viewers as I ever get. You know, the most I've ever had is like 11, right? So nobody even knows I exist, right? But it's a really cool little community, and you guys are come around pretty consistently, you know, and it's a really cool thing. So I totally could see taking some of these kind of quote-unquote fan contributions and including them in a, you know, a little making of video or kind of a story behind the story kind of thing. It's all good. It's all good, friends. It's all good. So, okay, so we got to get some shadows going here on Mel. So what I'm doing, for those who don't necessarily know, is I'm using a vector level so that I can just literally draw the shape and have the software just fill the shapes for me on the fly. Okay. And then I actually don't use vectors for much at all in OpenToonz or Tahoma. The one area where I do tend to use them is like this, for just quick and dirty shadows. And then occasionally I'll use them actually for backgrounds as well. Because what I can do is I can use these closed shapes to block in a drawing, kind of like this one you see in the background here. It's very simple. You could draw these shapes and then actually use varying levels of transparent vector shapes to sort of build up the volumes, which from the standpoint of painting is pretty good practice, because it kind of forces you to think in terms of a limited number of value levels, like maybe a half dozen, right, from shadow to highlight. For most people, embracing those limits is usually a good thing. It's going to make your art better, not worse. Okay, so again, if you're using a vector level like this, where you're drawing these closed shapes, and you do what I just did, where you spontaneously create a new cell, make sure you draw a shape. Don't just click the screen to create a new keyframe thinking you're going to then start drawing, because if you do, Tahoma will blow up. And I've had it happen over and over and over again. So I learned the hard way. You want to actually drag your stylus and make sure you actually create a shape. So
Otherwise you'll be crying like a baby, singing the song of misery. Singing the song of misery. And by the way, this is a voice that I didn't really include in my voiceover video that I did a couple of days ago. Oh, it was fun. It was so much fun.
I literally walk around my house doing stupid voices. I drive everybody crazy. I do. Because it's just so organic to who I am as a person. It just so captures the essential me. So yeah, in point of fact, when I'm here, last year, I'm actually fairly restrained here, even though I'm probably a pretty obnoxious guy. By any standards, sir, you are an obnoxious fella. Yeah. Okay, so I will do a Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera version this weekend of my characters. That'd be cool. I'd like to see that. Save early, save often. Yep, the closed vector thing. Sifter, I think not. I'm pretty sure that the auto close, auto group, auto fill is not in OpenToonz, but I could be wrong. Dude, let's find out right now. This is Tahoma 1.2. Let's open up OpenToonz 1.5. There are builds out there, okay, of OpenToonz that have additions or fixes compared to this version, but this is the official 1.5. And the question is, if we create a vector level, can we, and we hit the B key, let's go to drawing. As far as I can see, did we just create a vector level, or did we create a... Yeah, idiot. I'm so sorry. The layout isn't what I'm used to, so forgive me, friends. So it looks like they changed the default. Yes, they changed the default. So actually they put for years vector's been the first icon, and now vector is the last icon. So sorry about that. Okay. So now we have a vector level, and I'm going to hit the B key. And as you can see, nope. And as you can also see, I had to click that twice. Oh, I guess it's because I got frame range turned on. So, okay, so the answer is no. If you want to be able to have auto-closed shapes, like I'm using, which I use kind of a lot for shadows and some things here in Tahoma. If you're an OpenToonz person, you are out of luck. Out of luck, my friends. Out of luck. Okay, I need to do one thing here. This shot is shot number 86. And I want to check on the other screen. I am checking the media. Okay, this is a ping image sequence for shot number 086. So that means we come back to Tahoma, and let's go to our render output settings, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to put in plus scenes 086 render, and that's just my naming convention. Yours might be different. 086, and it should be ping. Normally I would be doing JPEG. The only reason I'm doing ping is because that's what I had before, and so now I can overwrite those images, and then it'll just automatically update the edit. So I'm going to go ahead and render the shot. Excuse me, scratching my nose. The pre-computing is taking a bit of time. All right, and that means now I can go jump over here, and what will happen is this will just update. And nope, it won't update. So that means, why did that not work? Okay, so now I don't particularly like to bore you guys with this kind of thing, but why did that just happen? This is one of the great annoyances in my life, is when something like this happens, where I double check, I triple check, I determine that this is scenes 86 render 086 ping, and it's actually up through 160. Okay, I know what's going on. Okay, what's going on is that I only rendered. No, this still doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. Okay, so let me just double check. Scenes 86. Am I seeing this wrong? No, it looks right. If we go here, there's 86, and we're in the render folder, and there it is. Okay. So everything looks correct to me. So when you want to solve a problem like this, here's the brute force way to do it, which probably makes sense because, after all, the timing here is a little modified anyway. So I'm going to hit Control L so I can ripple edit, and I'm going to just push everything downstream like this and delete this out of the show. Just get rid of it. Okay. Quick double check. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to actually move that a little bit downstream like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to reinsert. And now what we'll be able to do is figure out what went wrong. So I'm going to go into the scenes 086 right here, and there's the render folder, and we've got this sequence of pings up through 108. Where the heck did the... Oh boy, this is a little embarrassing. Little embarrassing here, people. Okay. 89. There it is, there it is. Did I just say 89? I thought it was 86. So, yeah, so we've got an image sequence 86, 0 through 160, and then we've got 86, 0 through 108. 108's the one I just rendered, so. Okay. So let's pop that into the show. See what we have. Oop! We got to get rid of the interpolation there, the resampling. Boop! Ah, the tongue stuck back out. Okay, and this really should be going to here. He says his line of dialogue. And so you've got this contrasted with this. He's definitely way more on character here. That's like almost kind of scary. His hair color is more accurate as well. So, so we're going to bop back here. I think what I'm going to do is just kill a little bit of saturation there. Kind of split the difference slightly. And I need to refill my cup. I'm going to take a 1-minute break. It looks like I'm going to continue. I'm not using Windows 7, it's Windows 8.1. I'm going to come back and I'll read the comments in a second, but for the moment what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and oh brother, let's just kind of loop the show and let some stuff play for half a second here while I go take a break. I'll be back in the cup. Yeah, give me about 3 minutes, I think. So there you go. You can see the characterization. There's so many things through here that I like. That shot was redone recently. It just seems quite improved. And that one, yada yada yada. You get the idea. So there's lots of things to improve here. Now there's actually another issue here on this shot that let's address right now, which is if we really want to punch it up a notch, we really should use the I've been liberally using the body highlight effect to just add a dimension to the characters that simply doesn't exist. You could roll your own, do it the hard way, but there's so many cool effects in OpenToonz/Tahoma that are available that you can see. The compositing in this program is pretty cool. Okay, so the body highlight effect, the way I've been using it lately, yeah, and the other thing in this shot that I haven't addressed, by the way, Dead Pianist, is the is secondary animation using the plastic tool, which I think would be appropriate, especially at the beginning of the shot. I'd like to see a little bit of a jerk of his head, and there's just not a good reason to necessarily do that with multiple drawings. You know, we could put in a little well, you get my point. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, what I found to be quite useful is switch the color to black and then invert it so that it actually creates this shadow type situation. In this case, the direction of the light is kind of wrong. This probably needs to be about either like somewhere between 5 and -5, I suspect. Yeah, that's probably okay. So we're catching a little highlight on his shoulders. And then what we'll do is we'll just as I've said here many times, it's like EQing music. You want to move fairly quickly so that you get a sense of the change, because you acclimate to color really, really, really fast. Not sure. I think I think let me do that again. Let me look at that one more time. This might be a case where we want two of them. Okay, I'm going to make that a little more opaque. And then I'm going to add a second one. So I'm hitting Control C, then grab the little line that connects them. And I guess we could kind of straighten this out a little bit to make it a little easier to work with. But then I'm going to grab this and Control V, actually stick a second instance of it in. But for this one, I'm going to go back to white and uninvert it. And then push this up to maybe 10 or so. And then make it a little harsher. Yeah, so we really kind of catch the sun. Now what I don't like here is the level of blur. It's starting to make the whole thing look too, I don't know, kind of 3D or whatever. So 10, a little more. Yeah, a little more. And I don't quite like the directionality. There, that's better. I like that better. So I'm just trying to get these sort of like two levels of shading. You know, I can always change my mind, but so if we render that. Okay, so now I'm going to take half a second and look back here at the comments. So I'm going back kind of a ways. I wish I had more time to rig that fan art. Oh, okay, the vector thing we were talking about. I would say the filling based on the other layer finally being added to Tahoma was huge. You know, at first glance I thought it was huge, and obviously it does need more tweaking to perfect it, as you say. I think that just based on the way smart raster levels work, I don't know if it's going to actually be that big of a win. It is a win, but it's nice to have, but I don't actually think I'm going to be using it that much. Custom layer mask, clipping mask, animated liquefy, and custom wand selection would be cool for selection tweaks and filling and flattening as well. Feather light to older machine from my experience. Yeah, I've gotten pretty good at, you know, I basically run Windows 8. On all my Windows machines run 8. Well, actually that's not true. Valerie's machine right next door here is on running Windows 10. I've been using your dual body highlight effect lately. It's just a really cheap, fast way to just punch up the look of the show. And then Tom's correct. If you allow too much blur in there, it gets a little extreme quick in terms of the 3D look. This is okay. There's still some, okay, there's a little tweak in the edit there. So yeah, I would say there's still some things that maybe could be improved a bit, but we're closer. You know, we're getting there. And then of course now this shot's going to have to be tweaked. And just for fun, what I may do is go ahead and redraw it, not just completely reuse this shot, but actually redraw to better capture this angle on his head. So part of the fun challenge would be to take this and do a tween to get him into this position here. So, hey, it's all just stuff you got to do, know what I'm saying? There's some stuff going forward here where TNR gives the money to the guy that definitely needs some work. Definitely needs some work. So, little drink of my tasty beverage, which is water. And what do we do? Well, by the way, crop that to the camera. Again, the thing with the bowls is obviously pretty cartoony. I think we're in good stead. I think we're okay here. Okay, yeah, that was the glitch I noticed. His tongue pops back out. Oh dear. In this drawing. That's a mistake, since the tongue was removed. So I'm going to hit the Smart Raster Paintbrush tool. And just kind of do this the old school way. With what we call scribbling. Okay, and obviously what I can do here is go hit the S key, just select his mouth, go back to 5 and paste it in, and that solves that problem. Okay, cool beans. Alright, I did mention the plastic tool, didn't I? Okay, do we want to do the plastic tool? Well, if we're going to do the plastic tool, here's how we're going to do it. And I think I'll do this and then probably wrap up for this session. So expect I'll be done in about 10 minutes. So I'm going to hit the X key, create a mesh, and there it is. And I'm going to only run it through to, okay, I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to run it through to here. Okay, just to there. Since we've got a turn of the head baked in right there. Okay, so now what we got to do is build a skeleton. So I'm going to put this here so I can fully see the character's breakdown. Alright, and then we're going to put in a few nodes like this to sort of protect the bottom part of the character so that when the bones move, we don't accidentally move things that we didn't intend to. And that's probably going to be about right. And now one thing I do oftentimes is just start moving things around. Just move things around and see if when you move them spontaneously, they kind of sort of look right. Because if they do, then they tend to look right when you animate them too. Okay. So basically, we'll give him a couple frames to get into the shot, and then a couple frames to sort of settle into where he's going to be, like so. And then here, what we could do is actually add a tween just for the heck of it. So I'm going to go Control C, Control V, and then 2 frames later, I'm just going to go like this, because then we're going to get to here. So now this might be moving too slowly. It is moving too slowly, definitely. Okay, and now, it feels a little jerky to me. So this is one of those dilemmas that you have with tweening. It's a little non-intuitive. The reality is, it looks better when he snaps to the new position, in my opinion, like that. So adding the tweens actually doesn't help. Up here, where that tween is all you get, there is no changes in the drawings, it's fine. So lands in his position and then poof. See, that looks way smoother. When I added the plastic tool, it actually made it look worse. So as far as the end of that little part of it. So now the question becomes, well, what about the stuff that the plastic tool isn't having an effect on? Okay, so if you hit F3 and you go into the stage schematic, what you see is that you got the plastic tool, which is affecting column 2. And obviously it's only affecting column 2 up until the plastic tool stops being there. Once the plastic tool cells, if you will, end, then its influence ends as well. Okay, so now the problem is his shadows. Okay, so the shadows would have to be, which are column 5. We'll change the name to SHD. And there it is. So now we have a little bit of a dilemma here, because we're going to map the shadows into the plastic tool so that they bend. But the problem is, let's hit insert here. The problem is once we get here, oh, I guess, okay, forget what I was about to say. I was going to say, I was thinking stupidly that once the plastic tool's influence stops, that the shadows will be in the wrong place, but because the plastic tool ends, the shadows just snap back to where they're supposed to be. So we're in good shape. So this extra column is, sorry, not needed. Okay, so we save our work. Save, save, save. Control-Shift-R to render. And it's not rendering because it's saving, right? It's taking a little time to save itself. So while it's saving itself, I'll take a drink of my tasty beverage, which again is water. You parented to the face, not the plastic tool, I believe. You could be right. Nope, you're wrong. I parented the shadows to the plastic tool, just as the body is parented to the plastic tool. If you parented the shadows to the face, I think that would actually work if it wasn't for the fact that there's a translation on the face. If it wasn't for this keyframe right here, actually if we move this keyframe downstream to here, I suspect, looks like I could be wrong. So I was thinking because of the offset that creates on the character itself, that's going to distort where the shadows land. But bottom line is that everything that's going to be influenced by the plastic tool needs to go through the plastic tool directly. And this would only make sense parented to it if you were going to draw the shadows taking into account the initial translation of the body. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. That's a lot of gobbledygook, but bottom line is that generally speaking, if you're using the plastic tool, you just take all levels that are going to be mapped through it and you just, well, map them through it. Okay, so now that gives us, so we've got kind of the light thing happening. Not bad, not bad. Yeah, not bad. I mean, it feels pretty good to me. The highlight on his shoulders seems, and hair feels a little harsh. 10 Pence Music. Hey, good 10 Pence Music. It was you I was chatting with on Discord the other day. Don't know if I was helpful at all. It was kind of a deep discussion that most of the people here would not be interested in about trying to convert a 5.1 audio mix from a DVD, ripped from a DVD, and convert it to a Dolby surround format, which I don't even remember what the format was. But those sorts of operations tend to be fraught with gotchas, believe me. And so we were chatting a bit about the challenges of dealing with surround formats and that sort of stuff. So I'm going to just turn that down a little bit. One other thing that's kind of noteworthy here. It would be more noteworthy if you were using a really harsh effect like this. Okay, because what it does here, as you can see, is it totally occludes the outlines. Now that may be desirable, but that's where you may play around a bit with the effects here, the blending mode on the effect, because probably, let's see what multiply does. Multiply doesn't really help at all. Lighten? Nope, that occludes it too. Darken obviously isn't going to work, so over, add. Yeah, it looks like there's, yeah, over's the default. So there really isn't a good blending mode that would cause it to lighten up the color but not affect the outlines. Not the end of the world, but I'm kind of feeling like that's where we want to be. I just don't feel like I wanted it to be that harsh. I could be wrong, you know, I could change my mind, so. There it is, people, there it is. But in terms of the overall shot being more consistent with the level of quality, Dominic, ProLogic 2 on Reaper. I don't even know how to answer those questions. when I've done, I'll just explain here verbally really fast what I explained to Tenpence Music yesterday. The only time I have done surround mixes, now this is one of those topics that's kind of interesting to me that probably most of the people on this channel would find boring. Okay, so here's the thing. When new audio formats happen, okay, which, and not debating the benefits of those formats, you know, like surround formats, it's not unlike what you see when new cameras come out, or new, like 4K. 4K is a great example of that. 4K is a great example of what I'm trying to say right now, which is this. The marketplace never asked for 4K. The marketplace never demanded 4K. But generally, the marketplace is driven, really frankly, much more by supply than demand. It's driven by supply that is then promoted. You promote the benefits, and on the supply side, you promote something so that people will buy the new thing. And part of that process is promoting it in such a way as to convey the impression that this is the new thing. If you don't do this or have this, you're not with it. And in the pro audio and video domain, this happens all the time. So the idea is that you've got to get the newest camera. You have to be shooting RAW, right? You can't be shooting MP4 files on your camera. You need to be shooting RAW, because if you shoot RAW, then you can get this amazing look that you're seeing in the latest, coolest movie or whatever. You know, so the whole idea is to make you believe that it's absolutely essential that you shoot RAW. So you go out and you spend $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 on your latest Blackmagic camera. Why? Because it shoots RAW. Completely overlooking the fact that the question of shooting RAW, does it give you more control over color grading? Yes. Does it matter? Almost never. It's why you can do most color correction on images with 8-bit color channels. Do you have more latitude and power, if you will, if you have 16 bits per color channel? Yes. Does it matter? Almost never. Almost never. And the whole industry is always trying to get us to buy into the latest format. So, because otherwise, if you don't buy a camera, or if you don't buy a 4K screen or whatever it is, they're not making any money. Okay? They're making zero if you don't buy into the idea that you're not with it, if you don't get this. And of course, it all starts at the semi-pro level, because that's where the lion's share of the buyers are, right? Robert Rodriguez is going to buy 2 cameras. People like you and me are going to buy 1 million cameras. So where do their promotional efforts need to go? Well, it needs to be on people like you and me. This is why I talked about, if you want to improve your video, don't go out and buy the newest camera. Learn how to use a light. Okay? Because my cheapo dimmable LEDs that are $30 on Amazon are what makes the difference between good-looking video versus crappy-looking video. It's almost always the light. It's almost never the camera. So in the world of cameras, it's 80% the lights, and then of the 20% that's left, 80% of that is the lens on the camera. And other things like the framing and, you know, obvious things about how you set up your shot. 2%, well, actually, you know, 1.6% or whatever it is the camera. The camera is like the least important thing. But yet, the whole idea is for you to buy the latest, greatest camera. Well, these audio formats are the same way. Okay, so is it Pro Logic? You know, what should I do my mix in? Pro Logic or you know, should I use SR? You know, you're getting into noise reduction algorithms and what's the best way to approach that and blah, 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 blah. Well, when you talk about noise reduction, obviously an old school noise gate combined with recording your audio in an environment where you don't have a lot of extraneous noise, those two things go much further towards getting you to where you want to be in terms of audio quality than worrying about your noise reduction format or your surround format or anything like that. Basically, all this stuff is noise in the real world. Why? Because, okay, so I'm going to do a mix on my audio for my show, okay? And I do a stereo mix and it sounds good, okay? Now, getting back to what Tenpence said, here's the deal. I've only ever done a surround mix under one circumstance, and that was when I was taking, in terms of this stuff I'm talking about now, you haven't missed anything, okay, Tenpence Music. So I'm only now delving into the audio side of things. Okay, when I've done movies, I've mixed them in stereo. In the real world, what happens is, to get back to Tenpence Music's problem, his problem is he's trying to take a 5.1 mix from a DVD and convert it into the Dolby Pro Logic 2 format. Okay, and after we talked about it for quite a bit on Discord, my conclusion was this. The problem you're actually dealing with has to do with the software tool that the guy who mastered the DVD, what software did he use to encode into surround? Because what probably happened was he took a software tool that took a pretty good stereo mix and automatically converted it into the 5.1 format for the DVD distribution, literally in 1 minute. Like, that's probably what happened. Is that for sure what happened? No. He might have done a proper an actual 6-channel surround mix. He might have. Probably not. Probably not. Probably what he did was he said, well, I got a great stereo mix. Let's let this software just encode it into 5.1, and we'll let the software make all the decisions about how it takes the stereo channels, and now it's going to distribute those stereo channels into front, left and right, rear, left and right, center, and subwoofer. 6 channels. And so now what you're doing is, so the software decided how to distribute that mix over the 6 channels. And now you're taking that mix and you're trying to deconstruct it and reconstruct it into Dolby Pro Logic. Well, the problem is that your software now has to make a guess at how the source material gets extracted out of the 5.1 mix. What you're missing is that the whole way that it got encoded into 5.1 in the first place was probably a very quick and dirty modification decided by the software in 10 seconds or less from a stereo mix. That's probably what happened. If it guesses wrong about how to extract the 6 channels out of that 5.1 mix, then you do not have 6 independent channels that give you the control you want to go back to your new format. This kind of stuff happens all the time. So my point to Tenpence Music was that in the real world, the industry that has products to sell and software to sell wants you to believe that everybody in the real industry, what they're really doing is they're all out there doing proper 5.1 mixes all the time for everything, because it's got to be surround if you're going to be the modern producer, right? No. In the real world, that is not how it works. Because of all the, if 10,000 people are going to hear your show or watch your DVD, you know how many of them are actually going to hear it in a proper surround system? Like 4. Like 0. Very, very few. In fact, most of the people that are going to watch your product nowadays are going to be watching it on a phone. For all intents and purposes, it's a mono mix. It's not even stereo, basically, right, in terms of what they're going to hear. And so you run into all these kinds of problems with, well, what goes in the center channel? Do we take the right and left, sum them together, and just put that in the center channel? If you're going to put it in the center channel, do you lower it a little bit so the center channel doesn't dominate? What do? The only time I ever had to deal with that was when I was going into a theater and I'm taking a movie and I have to create a surround mix for the stereos, for the theater system. And guess what? Guess what happens in the real world? You find out that the theater hasn't maintained their 5.1 system. Those 2 speakers in the rear, actually those speakers are broken because of some movie that played, they had the levels too loud and they actually blew out the speakers, and they've actually got them turned off, and the people in the theater don't even know it. They don't even know. They don't know, and they don't care. Right? And so we had a so we had a situation where in the one the movie showing, this one movie of mine showed for 5 weeks, actually. Now, it was just in the one theater, so it was kind of a local release, but it stayed in the theater for 5 weeks, which is insane. That's a really long time. But the one theater, so there's like 8 theaters where, well, okay, at any one time it was probably showing in 3 of them. You know, it's like there's 8 screens and 3 of them were showing my movie, something like that, okay, or whatever. But the one theater that they had it in, the only speaker that actually worked in that room was the center. It's like, what do you do with that? And so it sounded really boxy and nasty, and every movie they played in there sounded boxy and nasty. This is like the kind of stuff you deal with, that you bump into in the real world, because it all boils down to, well, are you going to spend the money to upgrade your 5.1 system? Obviously, the industry and the okay, so let me I'm going to take this even a step further, because it really gets into the politics of marketing. Okay. So the theaters, so here's what actually happened. This happened about 15 years ago or whatever. So the theaters are running films, right? They're putting films on a projector. Okay. All right. But, digital's the new thing. Everything's going to be digital projection. Well, that's true. It is true that digital projection doesn't degrade. You can show it 10 million times and it doesn't degrade, whereas a film, after a period of time, starts to wear out, right? Okay. So what happened was the industry did the same thing to the theaters. They said, well, if you're going to run the latest Star Wars movie, you have to upgrade your equipment to digital projection. Say, okay, all right, fine. I'm going to suffer installing a new projector that loads the movie off of a hard drive and projects digitally. Fine. It's going to cost me about $50,000 up to maybe a couple $100,000 to replace the projector. Okay, this really happened. It happened to everybody. So then the problem all of a sudden comes back to the producers, where guys like me that have a small independent film, now I can't run my movie in that theater unless I have a proper digital print of the movie. Well, guess what? The software and the format of the digital print is a very narrow, very not fault tolerant at all format, where if you make one mistake in creating your digital print, you're going to go to the theater, load it up, you're going to spend 2 hours loading it into this projector that runs a special build of Linux, basically, on the projector, and you're going to get the whole thing done. You're going to work on this thing for a week, go load it in the projector, and it won't play. And you're going to have to go back home, start all over, figure out what went wrong, and over and over and over, back and forth. Rinse and repeat, repeatedly. Okay? That's not the evil part. The evil part was that what the theaters did was they've got to recoup the cost of that projector. And they're not recouping the costs from ticket sales. What do you do? Well, what they did was the industry said, well, you've got to pay a digital print fee. So the idea was, if I want to run my independent movie in your theater, I've got to pay you $1,000 to load it, to basically have a guy take a hard drive, plug it into the projector, and walk away and have lunch. Okay? So the process of loading the digital print onto the projector ostensibly costs me, as the creator of the film, $1,000. Digital print fee, they called it. And it was just a scam to recoup the cost of the projector. Because they're not doing it out of ticket sales or popcorn sales. So this kind of stuff happens all the time, and it was really problematic. To be fair, putting your movie on film is expensive too, right? So if you were a normal human being, you'd say, well, wait a second. It seems to me the solution is to just make a Blu-ray, and can't you just pipe a Blu-ray into your projector and just project it into the theater? And here's the reality: some can. Would it look as good? Yeah, it looked the same. But the theaters couldn't do it. They were constrained. If I remember correctly, they were constrained by the studios vis-a-vis the projectors that they were forced to buy to not do that. In essence, Hollywood, I hate to, I sound like some totally, I'm a kind of a progressive guy, but I sound like a totally progressive whiner now. Okay, so I'm not trying to be a whiner. I'm trying to tell you what really happened. So what happened is Hollywood collectively adopted these standards. And why do they adopt these standards? Well, we want to ensure quality. We want to ensure that the films that show in our theaters and your theaters are always of the utmost quality. And so the way we're going to preserve quality is to have these really exorbitant fees that prevent independent filmmakers from being able to show their movie in your theater, because you're nibbling away at them $1,000 here and $1,000 there, to where it becomes punitive to just be able to show your freaking movie. Now, this problem is not as big of a deal nowadays. You know why? Because with COVID-19 plus the advent of digital streaming platforms, basically theaters are dying. So this whole game has turned around now, but it's only turned around in the last 2 to 5 years, really, right? So, but these are things you run into when you're trying to do, you're just a regular guy who's produced, you spent 6 months making a movie, and here in your local town especially, people want to see the movie. It's like a big deal that somebody in Fort Wayne, Indiana, created an actual feature film, which I've done, multiple times, and people want to see it, right? And so then you bump into all these situations. Well, what actually happened in practice was it again became political. If the demand was sufficiently high that they knew the ticket sales were going to happen, a movie in a theater for 5 weeks makes the theater a lot of money. Okay? About 50 grand. Okay? So now all of a sudden the political teeter-totter tilted the other way, to where it's like, well, we're going to make an exception for you. We're not going to charge you the digital print fee because we want to support our local filmmakers. Well, wait a minute. 10 minutes ago, you told me it was going to cost me $1,000, and now you're telling me you want to support your local filmmakers. Well, you're going to tell the story you're going to tell because you're looking at the dollar signs, and you recognize the fact that you're going to make the money if you show the freaking movie. That's the way it actually works in the real world. And I wouldn't even say that it's a bad thing, to a degree. It does become a bit of a filter where, we're not just going to open up our theater where anybody that shot a movie on their phone is going to be taking up our theater time, projecting their movie. So there's a little bit of a filter process. But the politics of it and the way that feeds into the money part of it is really, really interesting. Okay, so Maria says, this makes me think of the problems with tiny theater groups. We wound up working with only non-union actors because of the restrictions and costs meant to protect actors against larger organizations. The smaller ones struggle and the union actors suffer. Yes, anything with unions, or anything where you have this tug of war between what the people who currently are in power claim is about enforcing standards, is always a tug of war against the people who have done work that absolutely rises to that standard, but they're not either in the union or they're not doing things the conventional way. They're basically thinking in a guerrilla style entrepreneurial fashion, and they're going, what's the big deal here? Let me plug in my Blu-ray into your stupid projector, and if I can fill the theater with 2,000 people, I think you're going to be happy, right? And so then the theater has to make a choice, and sometimes the politics of the parent organization feeds into that and aggravates the problem. Therefore, true story, my movie that showed for 5 weeks showed in a theater called Carmike. Carmike got acquired, and my next movie, Clerical Errors, it was a little clunkier. It was a little Clerical Errors only showed in the theater for 3 weeks, and that's the movie that's on my YouTube channel here that you can watch for free right now if you want to. That movie showed for 3 weeks, and dealing with the parent company, Carmike, was a little clunkier. And then that company got acquired by AMC. And when AMC acquired the theater, they quit returning my calls. Because the corporate juggernaut of AMC couldn't possibly give a rip about your stupid, worthless, locally produced independent film. We don't care. We don't give a shit. That's not our business. Don't bother us. You're wasting our time. Okay, I get that, and that is their prerogative. But that is what happened. When it was a smaller company like Carmike, I was actually able to talk with the managers locally and converse with the regional managers, who all collectively were on board with the idea that this pretty good film that was produced right here in this town, might really bring people into the theater. And believe me, it did. For several weeks. And then as the ownership got further and further and further removed from the local town through 2 acquisitions, it became increasingly difficult to even deal with the company at all. Where the problem was that when Carmike got acquired, when it went to the intermediate owner, they met with us. And it's really crazy because we went down to Columbus, Georgia, and actually met with these people. And we had a meeting with them and sat down with them for an hour or so. And there was 3 of them. The one guy turned out to be a really good guy. The other 2 were marketing people. And they're like, oh, yeah, this is so cool. This is so exciting what you did with your last. Oh, yeah, we definitely want to support you. We want to support you with the marketing and absolutely on our social media. We're just, oh, this is so exciting. Yeah, we really want to get behind ya. Well, we no sooner left that meeting, and the marketing people never, ever returned another email or anything. They just came into the meeting, played their role, and then completely forgot about us the minute we were gone. And the key liaison there in Georgia, when I got back with him 2 weeks later, I'm like, dude, we're coming up on our release date here, and your people that were so enthusiastic they're just not even responding at all. It's not like they're saying, yeah, you know what, we've kind of changed our mind and we're just not really sure this is right for us. No, they're not even doing that. They're just like, no, nothing. And he was aghast. He was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing this. I mean, it's like, this is not acceptable. This is unprofessional. He was pissed. He was really upset about it. And then again, as I say, when AMC acquired the theaters, it was over at that point. You couldn't even deal with them. The people at the local theater hate their jobs now because they have no power to make any decisions about anything at all. They just have to do what they're told, and they can't interact with the community. They can't build a connection. It's like nothing. It's just like, no, we just, So this is the tug of war of corporate America. It's like I've talked a little bit about the problem when a company goes public. It's perfectly understandable, by the way, to be clear. It's totally understandable. When a company goes public, they have to stop being primarily about satisfying the customer. They have to be more about satisfying the short-term interests of the stockholders. Because that's who they answer to. That's who owns the company now. So it makes sense. But it tends to create a set of incentives where companies are incentivized to do the wrong thing. Not all the time, but kind of a lot of the time. It just is the way the world works. Hence, a company owned by good people is going to be pretty reticent about going public. Because they know once they go public, their moral compass has to change. And it usually doesn't change for the better. Sometimes it does. Sometimes companies navigate that minefield well. But in the case of AMC is a juggernaut that just buys up theaters, willy-nilly. And, that's just their way of doing business, So for me, AMC is not a good company. I consider them a very, very bad company. But that's just my opinion. And my opinion doesn't really matter to them very much. So anyway, okay, so yeah, 10 Pence Music. The reason I tell you all this is because the basic bottom line of this discussion is that you're going to spend an inordinate amount of time creating that 5.1 mix. And I'm not saying this is you. This probably is not you. But guys that are either in the industry or peripherally related to the industry or trying to get into the industry, they think this is important and they spend a ton of time jumping through a lot of hoops to make it work, to adhere to standards that only a tiny, minuscule percentage of the audience is ever going to hear or see, you know? The reality is most people are going to watch Salt and Light on a phone. That's the reality, you know? They're not going to watch it on a good stereo system or even a big screen, although some will, right? That's just the nature of the world we live in. And I think it's a great thing. Okay, so the other side of all this for you guys that want to be creators is this. And I say this emphatically, and so hey, Darren T. So let me say this as the final button on top of this discussion. Friends, with the ascendancy of YouTube, even more so now than just 2 to 5 years ago, of Tubi, Pluto.tv, all these ad-supported platforms, the industry is changing now really, really fast. Tubi is even talking about original Tubi programming. You guys, there has never in the history of the world been a better time to be a media creator and have the opportunity to get your creation out there, distributed, you know, to find its audience, whatever that audience might be. Whether it's a 2-minute thing here on YouTube, or whether it's a 90-minute feature film, or whether it's something in between like Salt and Light, which is basically a TV show, you know, which will ultimately be on digital streaming platforms, right? Like Tubi. It will be here on YouTube, yada, 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 yada. There's never been a better time to chart your own path, because these platforms get the fact that there's people like you out there that are creating cool stuff that in some cases is grabbing an audience through, you know, maybe YouTube or whatever. And man, these guys, they want content. They want content. And then once it gets on those platforms, it's very democratic. If people watch it, if it gets eyeballs, they've got all the analytics of who's seeing the ads. And so what happens is, if your stuff is good and it pulls an audience, it'll make money. It just will. And it's, as I say, it's extremely democratic. And so at the end of the day, more now than at any time in the history of movies and TV, it has never been more true that if your content is either, let's say, good or is able to grow an audience or or attract an audience, there's never been a better time to be a creator. Never. Not even close. And that was not true just 5 years ago. The greatest harm that was done to my filmmaking in the short term was the large-scale bankruptcy of major retail outlets between 5 and 7 years ago, because that meant that the audience and the sales for my movies went from really pretty good to zero overnight. Well, that state of affairs was really sucky in the short term, but in the long term, it's been great, because it's taken 5 years or so for these streaming platforms to get some traction and to become the normal way that everybody's watching stuff, right? And so going forward, there's nothing but opportunity. Nothing but opportunity. So that's what I was saying, Darren, the other day about your, well, I said it in my comments about the ink and paint work on the show, which I assume you got that email, is that the thing you did with the Gaddis character, I mean, oh my gosh, develop a story around that character, develop a concept around that character, because what you're doing there, and this is, I'm referring to Darren T's channel with some of the stuff he live streamed, well, I know he live streamed last Sunday. The stuff he's doing with that character, that is a cool character. Now, it isn't the Gaddis character. That's what you started with, but you changed it. So it's an original character. But it really is a very appealing, cool character. And I encourage you to develop some kind of little story around it, and just maybe even if it's a 1-minute gag, like a joke, right, that you can do a finished production with that guy. And, you know, if you want me to do a voice for it or something, you just let me know. I'll do it for you, and it's not going to cost you a penny. And just do something with it so that you turn it from a simple animation exercise to a story, to something that people can actually watch from start to finish and and laugh at, or whatever. Just give them some little surprise. Look at, and by the way, I was dishing out a lot of compliments the other day to, let me see here. I want to look at this in my subscriptions. Bear with me for half a second because I really want to say this for you guys. Boom. Okay, so the other day I was extolling the virtues of full chain animation. Okay, so here's a guy who I believe, like Ed Tadeo, is in the Philippines. This guy, you guys, look at this guy's work. Look at the humor. Look at the execution. Yes, full chain. This guy is enormously talented. This is maybe the guy I've bumped into here in my live stream that I go, man, when I'm ready to hire somebody, if the guy's willing, this is the guy I would want on my team. Because he not only is great at animation, but he understands storytelling and gags and humor. Unbelievably talented guy. I don't know how quick he works. I don't know if this is a guy who's interested in doing more limited animation, which is kind of required for a show like Salt and Light because there's just so much to do. But I mean, wow, this guy. Everybody that subscribes to me should be subscribed to this guy and studying his work because it's really good. Super, super good. I can't say enough good about that guy. Yeah, unbelievable. But anyway, again, getting back to your little monster character. Dude, that guy, it's a high appeal character. It looks great. Now do something with it, Okay, so 10 Pence says, my show is an amateur animator's experiment. The 5.1 mix is a treat for music people. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes that's a good thing, you throw a bone to the aficionados. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a beautiful thing, actually. It's part of what builds community. I mean, honestly, and I've been talking here for a long time, but obviously one of the things we want to do here is the community aspect of it is, pretty important, right? Because it's fun. People that are like-minded and creative. Some of the people that are here probably aren't necessarily even that much into animation, But anyway, I'm blabbing. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. I've been going for 3 hours today. And as I said earlier, my average is about 2 hours. So, and I don't know if these stories from the trenches about my experience with theaters is particularly useful for you guys, but the good news is that if you're a creator, this is the kind of stuff you basically aren't going to have to deal with that much. If your content is good and you go to YouTube or to, you want to release it on, you want to get it on some of these streaming media platforms, I think generally speaking it's fair to say that if it's good, they're going to accept it. And then you're not going to have to jump through too many hoops in terms of creating the output format that they need. My experience has been what you need to do is convert. You don't want to give them just an MP4 typically. Normally what you're going to do is you're going to convert it to a ProRes format QuickTime, which you can do with FFmpeg. So you can do a command line operation on your MP4 and turn it into ProRes, which is what most digital platforms accept. Some of them actually accept a straight MP4 as well nowadays. As long as it's a high quality MP4, they're good, right? So it's way, way, way more flexible than it used to be. So anyway, I think with that, since I'm more than 3 hours into it, and I'm wasting everyone's time here because I'm not talking about animation, but you know what? We got a good shot done today, and I think it represents a palpable improvement in the shot. So if we look at this shot, we would probably agree. Basically, the acting here is pretty good, but in terms of the visuals, I think we'll probably agree that this is a bit of an improvement. So, and there still may be some things to do in terms of touching up the background and things like that. So, but now, of course, I've got to punch up this shot, and on it goes. So, with that, I think I'll take a break. And thank you guys for being here. I appreciate everyone. Yeah, well, I would say this, Dominic. I'll wrap up on this comment. MJPEG 2000. Can you please expand that? Are you aware of an MJPEG 2000? Dominic, do you know of an MJPEG 2000 codec that is free or open source? Something like that? Because the Cineform format under the hood, when David Newman programmed it, and which GoPro bought it. Okay, so GoPro uses Cineform under the hood. Basically, that's an MJPEG 2000. Basically. Okay, so it's not a discrete cosine transform compression algorithm. It's a wavelet compression algorithm, and that's what. So it's visually lossless, and it lets you gauge the quality of compression at the expense of artifacting, right? Okay, so I use the MJPEG 2000 codec from Morgan that you can buy for like $30 on one of my movies, like my 6th movie or something. And that was a really painful process, and the support from them when it started causing problems was basically non-existent. I am not aware of a free or open source MJ2000 codec. I'm actually not even aware of a paid MJPEG 2000 movie video codec that works. Okay, so you say you don't know either. So I will tell you that I have never heard of a platform ever asking for MJPEG 2000 as a delivery format. Never. I've never heard of that. It could be, at this point in history, that there is an effective MJPEG 2000 built into FFmpeg. If there is, then for those of you that are into film making, that could be a very effective, what we call an intermediate codec, which means you're taking the video out of your camera, you're converting it into an intermediate codec because it's visually lossless. You can actually do special effects and processing on it repeatedly without additional degradation of your video, and then you take that and convert that to whatever your delivery format is. So Tom is correct. You can convert anything into MP4, right? H264. I say MP4, I mean H264. Some people, vis-a-vis my conversation about the theaters and about Dolby and all the rest in 5.1, some people have H265, up their butt. That's their prerogative. The reality is most of the industry is pretty darn good with H264. And H264 is such a flexible format that you can use it for everything from crunching something down to a really tiny YouTube video up to completely visually lossless, editing formats, usually at the expense of hard drive space, basically. Less compression, more hard drive space, but it looks cleaner, So that's what you get. But basically what comes out of most of the cameras, at least I don't know about the latest generation of cameras, because once you get into RAW, you're dealing with image sequences, right? But as far as video, most of your cameras will save MP4s and they look real good, right? So anyway, I am going to go, and thanks for being here, and I'll try to focus more on just like drawing and maybe in pencil tests and all the rest if I stream tomorrow, which I probably will. So anyway, yes, correct. It's all a trade-off with compression formats. But if there is a universal format today, by far, without a doubt, it's H264. And it's a darn good format. So anyway, with that, I will end, and as you guys know, there will be more later.